The latest breaking news, first alert weather, and more streaming on CBS News Chicago.
Keeping you safer sooner. CBS 2 First Alert Weather. CBS 2 News streams here. CBS News Chicago.
Cutting the cord on cable? Stream CBS 2 News live every day on CBS News Chicago. Stream us when you need us. CBS 2 News is always streaming on CBS News Chicago.
Committed to telling your stories. CBS 2.
The latest breaking news, first alert weather, and more streaming on CBS News Chicago.
Keeping you safer sooner. CBS 2 First Alert Weather. CBS 2 News streams here. CBS News Chicago.
Cutting the cord on cable? Stream CBS 2 News live every day on CBS News Chicago. Stream us when you need us. CBS 2 News is always streaming on CBS News Chicago.
Committed to telling your stories. CBS 2.
ask the community residents what they would like to see. So we're confident that this is not going to in any way impede the enjoyment of the residents of this important park.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Quinn. We do have an acknowledgement of support from Alderman Curtis. Alderman Taylor, Alderman Mosley, I see you. We count you towards quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Alderman Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you tell me, you talked about the city being reimbursed. You never said the amount. What is the amount that we're paying for upfront?
The initial appropriation authorized by this city council was $65 million, and that is upfront financing to pay for certain aspects of the infrastructure. But again, the city will be reimbursed in full for those costs through the Joliet water rate that they're being charged.
What type of improvements would happen with the park district? And have they already started conversations with the community? Because us putting up $65 million and we'll get reimbursed. And I got a question for the water department after this. I want to know what we're actually getting. What is the benefit of the community? Because to Alderman Quinn's point, you will be disturbing those neighbors. It's because it's going to be some trucks, it's going to be something. And so what is the community benefit? What is the park district and the residents actually getting?
Sure.
Is that somewhere in a presentation?
Yes, ma'am. The answer is the park district and the community are receiving substantial funds from the city of Joliet to build new amenities and improvements at this park and the 3 surrounding parks.
How much is that amount?
Pardon me?
The amount.
Well, the amount of money that, and I should mention the $65 million appropriation that I alluded to, that is not for park improvements. That is just for the infrastructure. The park district is receiving, and I'll have to.
Beth Tomlins.
Yes.
I'm calling on you to answer this question. Yes.
Hello, hello. Hello, thank you for the question. Hello, Beth Tomlins from the Chicago Park District. There's 3 sets of money that we're getting from the city of Joliet as part of this project. The first is a $1.75 million flat fee. We're also getting reimbursed for the cost of the easements, which will be around $500,000. And then thirdly, they're funding the cost of the park on top of the reservoir, which is still being calculated, but all of that will be covered by the city of Joliet as well. We started working with the community in 2021 to discuss and normalize sort of what the improvements the community would like to see out here. We did a survey, received over 160 responses from the community, and are now going through to prioritize which improvements we want to do first. So they're very good. There'll be improvements that are very local to what the community wants, new spray feature, ball field improvements, those sort of amenities. But we're working very closely with the community and have a good relationship. Our goal is to design and construct those starting this and next year so that the parks will be improved before the Joliet construction starts.
Is it possible for us to get a hold of some data from those surveys? Absolutely. Just to see what the community is asking for?
Yes, ma'am. We'll put that through the chair.
Next question is for the water department. You talked about these other local cities wanting water. Where are we on receiving payment for water that we're already giving out? I remember in one of the very first meetings, we talked about payment. We're not getting payment for water from other districts that are getting water from us. This is a lot of money. And so where are we with payments from other areas that owe us money for water?
You know, there's obviously 47 direct connects that we have contracts with. I think we can provide the updated ones of the few that we've had a history of having trouble collecting through the chair. But the city of Joliet has an excellent rating financially. So I think we can count on collections from city of Joliet in the future.
And we can provide the specifics to the chair, but that was one of the questions that I raised in my briefings. There are some communities that are showing some improvement, but I don't think that you want to reveal specifically those suburban areas today. in a public forum like this. So we can get that information to you through the chair.
So, Madam Chair, with all due respect, we're asking the city of Chicago to put up this $65 million. That's a lot of money that we could use other places. And why I get, we got to have some accountability for what we're asking, because we'll go up on taxes. We'll do a whole bunch of other things to counter what we're not collecting. And so the question that I'm asking is not just for the co-workers. It should be a conversation that we're having. And this is not me beating up on other suburbs who can't afford it. It's us showing accountability for spending this money.
No,
and so
I'm
that's why I
saying
asked.
get that information to you through the chair, and you have between now and when we vote on whether or not you can support that. But there is information that will answer your question directly. I don't think that the Department of Water wanted to put those communities out on blast in the public forum, but there have been some improvements, and we will get that information to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my questions.
Vice Chair Conway. Sorry.
Just so I understand, Andrea, so it seems like another benefit of the project is we're going to receive $30+ million a year as the city for 93 straight years. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I understand that piece right.
Yes, that is correct.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge Alderman Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez and Alderman Villegas for quorum. Is there a motion to recommend approval? Yes, Alderman Spizzato.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that 30 million a year? Does it go up or is it level at 30 million?
So it has the potential to go up if they add communities. So that's sort of what we think our baseline is. So it does have the potential to increase if they add communities that they serve.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Spizzato. Is there a motion to recommend approval of this item? Moved by Vice Chair Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. We will report the due pass recommendation at the next city council meeting. Thank you all very much. I want to introduce our acting Chief Financial Officer, Jill Jaworski. I know you're going to come before us, but this is your first time before the city council. Do you want to say anything?
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Dowell. Good to see all of the members of the committee. I'm really looking forward to working with all of you going forward. I started the position about, I guess, 7 weeks ago, and it's very, very exciting getting to know everyone. Some of you I've gotten a chance to meet with, but most of you I have not, and very much looking forward to a collaborative relationship. I want you to know my door is open, and please call, reach out with any questions you have. I'm happy to spend as much time as is necessary answering your questions and making sure that when we appear before you, you're as ready as possible to understand the issues in front of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge Alderman Cruz, who is a non-member who's joined us today. We will now move to the discussion for items number 2 and 3, which will be taken together, but we will vote on them separately. And so for items number 2 and 3, we have presenting the Department of Planning and Development. Item number 2 is an ordinance concerning the third amendment to the Fullerton Milwaukee TIF redevelopment project and plan in the 1st, 26th, 30th, 31st, and 35th wards, and an ordinance concerning a redevelopment agreement with an allocation of eligible TIF increment financing assistance to BR Congress Owner LLC, Congress Theater NFP, for the renovation of a facility called the Congress Theater at 2135 North Milwaukee in the 1st Ward. Tim Jeffries from the Department of Planning, Managing Deputy Commissioner, is with us today. Let's see. Okay. Item number 3 has a substitute. That substitute was emailed to everyone. Can I get a motion to accept the substitute? So moved by Alderman LaSpada. We will now consider item number 3 as a substitute. I want to acknowledge Alderman Curtis. We just passed the Durkin water supply issue, so I'm glad to see you. It went well. Got orange on today. And when you get a chance, can you also talk to Alderman Taylor about some of the community park improvements that you're expecting there? Because she asked that question, and I think you're best able to answer it.
Right after this. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tim Jeffries.
Thank you, Chair Dowell, and good morning, members of the Finance Committee. For the record, my name is Tim Jeffries, Managing Deputy Commissioner in the Department of Planning and Development. I'm here today to request your approval of 2 related ordinances. The first, item number 2, is a minor amendment to the Fullerton-Milwaukee Tax Increment Financing District with the primary purpose of extending the life of the TIF district for an additional term of 3 years. Agenda item number 3 provides authority for the city to enter into a redevelopment agreement with BR Congress Owner LLC and Congress Theater NFP that will authorize the use of up to $27 million in TIF funding to support the rehabilitation of the historic Congress Theater. These items are directly related to one another, and the approval of both is necessary to advance the redevelopment of the Congress. As stated, the first item is a short-term extension of the Fullerton-Milwaukee TIF district. Shown here are the boundaries of that TIF, which is located in portions of the 1st, 26th, 31st, and 35th wards in the Logan Square and Avondale community areas. Fullerton-Milwaukee is currently scheduled to expire on December 31st, 2024. The Congress Theater project cannot, however, reasonably incur sufficient TIF-eligible costs or complete construction in that limited time remaining. In order to address this, the Illinois General Assembly authorized an extension of the district in the most previous legislative session. Although that action allows the city to extend the district by up to 12 years, it is the opinion of DPD that the overall market conditions of the area would likely not warrant an extension without these extenuating circumstances. Given that, DPD is requesting only to extend the TIF district for 3 years, the time necessary to complete the Congress Theater project. The second item today is the approval of the TIF funds for the redevelopment of the Congress Theater, which is located at 2135 North Milwaukee Avenue and is within the Logan Square community area and the 1st Ward. The subject property, highlighted in red, is located at the corner of Milwaukee Avenue and Rockwell Avenue, roughly halfway between the CTA's Western Avenue and California Blue Line stations, and the primary commercial centers of activity in Wicker Park and Logan Square community areas. Shown here is the current exterior conditions of the Congress Theater. The building was originally constructed in 1926 as a 2,900-seat movie palace, the Lubliner and Trins, one of Chicago's largest cinema operators. The Congress was built in a typical theater block style, which combined the theater with ground floor retail and apartment buildings. At one point, the Congress Theater was one of more than 30 of these movie palaces of a similar size, but only a handful now remain. The Congress was used continually as a movie theater until around the 1980s, when it began to be used more frequently as a concert venue. Based on the building's architectural excellence and historic nature, the Congress was designated as a City of Chicago landmark in August 2000. The designation was notable in that it was not limited to the building's exterior, but also included the auditorium itself, which is shown here, as well as the theater lobby and even some of the historic lighting fixtures. After a series of violations, however, the former owner closed the theater in 2013, and it has been vacant since that time. Over the last decade, the deterioration of the theater has unfortunately accelerated significantly and has seen a great deal of damage in that time. The deterioration is evident in this photo here that's leading up to the second-story balcony. The damage to the walls and the ceiling is obvious, and these are not cosmetic issues. They're the results of significant water infiltration into the building as a whole. Further evidence of this deterioration and water damage can be seen in one of the stairwells in the interior lobby, one of the historic elements. At the same time, though, the history of the building is obvious in the ironwork, the gilded columns, and decorative arches. Overall, though, the deterioration of the building has reached a point where the future of the Congress as a whole may soon be in jeopardy. As recently as 2013, the facility was was operational, and in 2015, a public meeting was held in the building. The deterioration over the past decade has been so aggressive, though, that neither is possible today. The building conditions are simply not safe enough to allow access to the general public. The current proposal before you would, however, fully restore the Congress Theater as a state-of-the-art 3,500-seat live music venue that will be operated by AEG Presents. The project would also include the construction of 13,000 square feet of retail space along Milwaukee Avenue, 23,000 square feet of office space dedicated to nonprofits and community groups, and the development of 16 residential units, 14 of which will be affordable. The scope of work includes a significant amount of exterior stabilization and a roof replacement, a total rehab of the interior spaces, including the building systems, and the restoration of the theater's historic features, including the marquee, the lobby spaces, and interior fixtures. If approved, this redevelopment project will be led by Baum Revision, a well-known Chicago-based developer with a well-established track record in successfully completing historic preservation projects. They will be pursuing the project in partnership with AEG Presents, who will operate the theater portion of the building after completion. The estimated total project cost of construction for this project is approximately $87.8 million. Up to $27 million of that budget, or 30.7%, is proposed to come from TIF. The remaining funds include $20.5 million in equity, a combined $23.8 million in lender financing and PACE debt, and $10.5 million in historic tax credits. If approved, the redevelopment agreement will reimburse the developer for up to $27 million in TIF-eligible costs. This reimbursement will be provided as two equal payments of $13.5 million, with the first made upon issuance of the certificate of completion, and the second at the one-year anniversary of the issuance of the certificate. The city's investment will be protected by provisions in the RDA that require at least 75% of the retail, commercial, and ARO units be leased and occupied, and that AEG continuously operate the theater for no less than 10 years. If these conditions are not met, then the city has the right to lien the property in order to recapture previously dispersed TIF funds. In addition to the affordable housing units, the RDA also requires that the developer provide commercial spaces at rents that are no greater than 75% of the neighborhood's market rate. Additionally, these spaces must also be leased to locally owned businesses, neighborhood organizations, or local artists. Once complete, the project will see the Congress Theater fully redeveloped with its historic elements restored, including the marquee shown in this rendering. Similarly, the project will maintain the historic integrity of the interior while still modernizing the facility in order to ensure that the building remains part of the community for another 100 years. Overall, DPD believes the use of TIF is critical to ensuring the rehabilitation of the Congress. Although the RDA provides the developer with a significant amount of TIF, the project is an extremely complex one with extraordinary costs associated with the restoration of the historic elements and the overall development constraints placed on the property from that designation. Just for context, the cost directly attributable to the Congress's historic elements is an estimated $25.7 million. Given that, DPD's analysis found that the use of public funds is a necessity and believes that this development will not move forward without an investment of public funds. Despite those costs, however, the project will still deliver significant benefits to the community and the city. The project would first and foremost result in the restoration of a City of Chicago landmark and the reactivation of a building that's been vacant for more than a decade. The RDA also provides for a significant number of community benefits, including the development of 14 affordable housing units, nearly 90% of the units in the building, as well as the creation of dedicated space for local businesses and community organizations at below market rents. It's for these reasons that the project has built a coalition of support from both neighborhood and Chicago-based organizations, including the Logan Square Chamber of Commerce, Preservation Chicago, and the Chicago Federation of Labor. Likewise, DPD is also supportive of the project's requested use of TIF, and we'd ask the committee for its favorable consideration of both requests. I'm also joined today by Scott Goldman and Andrew Scott from the development team, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you, Tim. Before we go to Alderman LaSpada, we have some questions you can wrap up. You want to be the last speaker, the first speaker?
Close.
Can you tell me that TIF district encompasses a number of aldermen? I want to make sure that all the aldermen support the extension. All the affected aldermen support the extension. Yes, that's for you, Tim.
Yes, we've worked with Alderman Laspada, and he's spoken to his colleagues, and they're all supportive.
Okay, that's enough. That's all I need to know. Vice Chair Conway.
A number of questions on the TIF portion of the ordinance. Well, actually, first off, I noticed that it looks like the TIF is 195 million, but the Congress Theater portion is only 27 million. Is the delta there? Has that already been spent, or can you explain that?
The 195, that's in the first number you're referring to is in the designation budget, right? Okay, that number sets the total amount of funds that can be spent in any given TIF. The city is allowed to change that to adjust for CPI plus 5%. So it's just the cap, the theoretical cap of how much can be spent. I get all of the details of how we spent that money in the past or in our annual reports. I can get those for you, but essentially,
I
yes.
would just, Tim, I was just clarifying if that involved past.
Yes, no,
they're
unrelated numbers.
Since it's a huge delta there.
Yeah.
Also in that, I saw it looked like there was a deferred interest subsidy for 7.1 million. I also saw daycare 100,000, which is something I've never seen. Maybe you can speak to, like, why should the city be paying because the developer chose to finance this with debt instead of equity, for example?
So on the first part, those cost categories, those are statutory in the act. So we just match them. They're allowed to shift once they're set, but if you put 0 in them, you can never spend the money on those. So for daycare, for example, the city has never been able to quite figure it out. The requirements of the act, the requirements of TIF, and the theoretical ability to use them on daycare, they just don't match operationally. So those are in there just to ensure that if something changes in the future, we're protected, but we don't intend on spending those monies in those exact ways.
Right. Okay. And I also saw on the Congress Theater part, the deferred development fee of 5.9 million. Seems like a big number for an $87 million project. Can you explain why? But you did say it was complicated. Can you explain how that?
I'll let Scott Goldman explain it, but it's a way that they are able to maximize how much they could leverage from historic tax credits. But I'll let Scott explain.
No.
It's on.
Try
Nope.
again.
All right,
Yeah.
there we go. Hi, I'm Scott Goldman from Balmer Vision from the development team. Nice to meet everybody. So the deferred development fee is, so we're utilizing historic tax credits, which we do a lot of historic redevelopment. So what happens is there's a federal tax credit created as a result of the improvements that you invest in the property. And included in that bucket is something called a development fee. The development fee is a statutory part of historic tax credits equal to about 10 to 13% of the total development cost, and then gets factored into the bucket, and then the credit is a function of that development fee. So the incentive for everybody involved is to maximize the development fee. It's actually not paid out to the developer. It's just used to maximize the credit. Credit's then sold to a bank who provides the equity to subsidize the project. And so that credit then gets recontributed to the project as a source. So it's really sort of like a journal entry in accounting. If you think about it, asset contra asset, it's not an actual payment of fee in any way.
So the developer fee is not something that's paid to you as the developer. on that
Correct.
line. Okay, that was the question.
It's in the uses and in the sources.
I'll just add, this is something that's fairly common for my colleagues in the Department of Housing, where they maximize their credits like this. Not so much for us, but we are using it here where we can.
No, great. That's fantastic. The other thing I thought that was very unusual about this contract is I saw the portion on PDF page 13 that said, if the project cost is less than the $87.8 million, that the TIF gets reduced. That is literally disincentivizing Scott from finding cost savings. So I don't know why we include something on that.
That has been in there, certainly on every RDA I've worked on. I think it's a fine, with a lot of the work that we're doing, it's seeking a fine balance. Yes, to your point, it seeks it, but it also makes sure that they're coming to the table with a project that is defined as closely, as correctly as possible, so that when they go, they're not misrepresenting something, a budget that if we didn't have this in, that they are coming in for a $2 million TIF ask and they suddenly find $2 million in savings. If that were true, why would the city participate in it? So it's balancing the necessity of the financial analysis and establishing the but also making sure that we're giving the project what it needs to go
Maybe
forward.
it's something we should consider in the future changing, but that's an excellent answer. Madam Chairman, that's all the questions I have, and thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair Conway. Alderman Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How are you all securing the building?
We're not currently controlling the building. The building is currently controlled by a receiver through the court system. So the previous developer went into bankruptcy and the receiver took over. So there's a property management firm that currently secures it and manages the building.
And so the building is secured. I'm just concerned about more damage.
Yeah, and so are we. So we're excited to get started right away. Right after we get through this process, we're going to go and secure the building. There's some openings on the roof that have been the source of water damage that we've got guys ready to go as soon as we can access it.
How old is the building?
Building was constructed originally in the 1920s. I think it might be 1926 or 29, if I remember correctly.
About 100 years old.
Can you go back to the presentation where it talks about the finances?
Go on.
Go ahead.
Financing, you said?
Mm-hmm. Had a bunch of numbers on it. Okay. The historic tax credit, is this getting historical status?
It already is.
It already is. Okay. Those are all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderwoman Taylor. Want to acknowledge Alderman Urban and Alderman Talia Farrell, who joined us. I see you back there. Has joined us, will be counted towards quorum. And our next question comes from Alderman Villegas.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, what's the property taxes on this property now, and what are the projected property taxes once it's renovated?
I'll need to get you those both through the chair. I don't have them now. I mean, I'll need to get them to you through the chair.
Cool. And then there is a MWB component to this redevelopment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have they identified who the vendors are yet, who the prime vendors are, prime contractors are?
Scott.
Yeah, we have not identified those vendors yet. As you may be aware, we're finishing up the redevelopment of the Ramova Theater right now. We see MWB as the 26 and 6 as a floor, not a ceiling. The only items with respect to MWB for vendors that would not be locally sourced would be the very specific AV and sort of lighting equipment that AEG will use and bring in for a venue of this quality. This is a 3,500 person theater. It's going to do premier events. This is AEG's premier facility in Chicago. So those vendors, they source typically internationally. But outside of that, we're very much committed to MWB, just as we have been on the Ramova.
Thank you. Tim, do the new documents reflect the VBE goals that this council passed a couple years ago and looks like we might pass on Wednesday?
No, because it goes with it does not, no. Okay. It goes with the code, the provisions that apply to the certain sections that are very specifically narrow around the MBWB. So not for the moment, no.
All right, I'd like to talk to you afterwards to figure out how to incorporate that into these RDAs.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Villegas. Alderman LaSpada.
Thank you so much, Chair. Colleagues, I really appreciate you. Sorry.
Excuse me, Alderman LaSpada. Alderman Lopez has raised his hand. Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually just wanted to ask with regards to comments that two of our colleagues brought up with regards to updating the language in these agreements. I know even last term, we had numerous times where we discussed bringing the language to be more up to speed as opposed to just a routine matter of usage. Is that something that DPD is actually looking to take upon itself, or is that something that we need city council action to move forward on?
I think that generally DPD works with our colleagues in the Department of Housing and their construction compliance division, and they follow what is in the code. It's difficult for us to deploy these things on an ad hoc basis, project by project. So we follow what's in the code right now.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of being an ad hoc. I think we've heard over 8+ years in this body, aldermen ask for certain things to be incorporated or included. So perhaps, Chairman, that might be a signal for us to maybe have a working group together with the department so that we can make sure that everything that we're asking is incorporated and we're not just using language from 23 years ago when TIFs were first introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Alderman Laspada.
Hey, thank you so very much, Chair. Appreciate the opportunity very much to bring this forward. Actually, I was a resident / non-alderman in the first ward. The first time a developer came to us with this project, I was in the community meeting on that. And we asked about what are the community benefits for this development. And the previous developer said to us, well, the rehab of the theater is the community benefit. That is the best that we have to offer you. They wanted to do on one side of the building. Can you bring up the slide that shows the actual building for us, Tim?
Too fast.
So
Too
there,
fast.
go one more forward. So on the side that we're looking at here, they wanted to create essentially a staffless hotel.
Talking to
Sorry,
your mic.
I appreciate the call out. Wanted to do a staffless hotel. So not just not having a path to good jobs, a path to no jobs on that side of the development. On the retail spaces of the building, there was a handshake agreement for offering them to local entrepreneurs. But then I personally asked in the meeting, well, what's the rent that you're going to be offering to folks? And they said probably about $40 a square foot. Well, rents like that in Logan Square are completely opting out local entrepreneurs. So when we talk about putting things in writing and actually putting new things in writing, that's what we've done with this redevelopment agreement. Not only, as Tim shared, the whole side that we're looking at here is going to be 14 of these 16 units as affordable housing. So if you work at your Sika at Goethe Elementary down the street, if you're working at some of these cafes and restaurants, you'll be able to walk upstairs to your apartment if that's what you choose. But on the side of the building that we're not looking at, they're converting those second and third floors to meeting and workspaces for nonprofits and arts groups and community organizations in Logan Square. How do I know that? We actually wrote that into the RDA. How do we know the rents are going to be affordable? We wrote that into the RDA. To the best of my knowledge and to our conversations, this may be one of the first times that DPD has actually written enforceable language on commercial space affordability into a redevelopment agreement. We asked for these benefits because we actually held a community meeting with our residents saying, we know that this is going to take TIF to bring it forward. So what are the benefits that make that worthwhile to you? And so what our residents asked for is what we are delivering with this project. And a lot of folks brought up that but-for test, which goes back to the idea of, hey, but for TIF funding going into this, does the building get redeveloped? And it doesn't. We're on two converging paths right now, diverging paths, I should say. One leads to the demolition of this building. The other, which we get to select today, is for the complete rehab of this as a genuine community development project. Those are the very stark choices. And I will just close for you by saying I really believe in what we're doing. And I'll say on the TIF piece, the Fullerton-Milwaukee TIF, we are asking for time, not money. Time, not money. We ran up until a deadline that we would not be able to get the work completed on time. And so that is why we are seeking this extension. So I hope that answers the full questions. You all don't even see on this map, if you looked on any side of this building, it is flanked by massive vacant lots. And what we will do in part by energizing this is we catalyze productive development all up and down this corridor. So I'm really excited for what we have an opportunity to do today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Laspada. I drove by the Congress Hotel Friday night just to see what I thought of it. I admire you for taking this on because I can see if this gets done, that it opens up a lot of opportunity to improve Milwaukee Avenue, which looks better to the south, is that south? And not as good going north. Is there a motion to recommend approval of item number 2? So moved by Alderman Irvin, was that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. We'll report the due pass recommendation of this ordinance out at the next city council meeting. Now, is there a motion to recommend approval of the substitute ordinance for item number 3, which is for the theater itself? So moved by Alderman Taylor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. We'll report that matter out at the next city council meeting. Congratulations, Alderman Laspada. Item number 4 is an ordinance recommending a proposed ordinance concerning a redevelopment agreement with the provision of tax increment financing funds for the Hudson, Michigan Avenue owner, LLC, for the construction of varied income residential units, commercial, retail, and event space at 2222 South Michigan Avenue in the 3rd Ward. We're joined by Tim Jeffries, Managing Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Planning and Development, who will explain this wonderful project to my colleagues.
Good morning again, Chair Dowell, members of the Finance Committee. Tim Jeffries, Managing Deputy Commissioner in the Department of Planning and Development. This item requests your approval of a redevelopment agreement between the city and Hudson, Michigan Avenue owner, LLC, for the purpose of authorizing the use of up to $10 million in TIF funds in order to redevelop the historic Hudson Motor Company building. The subject property is located at 2222 South Michigan Avenue, which is in the near South Side community area and the Michigan Cermak TIF district. The property subject alder is Chair Dowell of the 3rd Ward. Shown here is an overhead view of the neighborhood with 2222 South Michigan highlighted. Subject property is located near the southeast corner of Michigan and Cermak and is in close proximity to both McCormick Place and the CTA's Cermak Green Line station. The property is the former Hudson Motor Company building, a contributing property in the Motor Row Landmark District, which is primarily located on Michigan Avenue from 14th Street to 25th Street. The property was originally constructed in 1922 and was designed by Alfred Alschuler, a prominent Chicago school architect who also designed the London Guarantee Building and the former Goldblatt's department store building at 4700 South Ashland Avenue. Shown here is the interior of the building's former 1st floor showroom. As you can see, the historic features here, including the tiled floor and decorative columns, remain largely intact. That said, the majority of the building has experienced heavy deterioration and requires a significant investment in order to bring it into a state of good repair. The project will renovate this 130,000 square foot Hudson Motor Company building into approximately 38 residential units, 20 of which will be affordable, and approximately 51,000 square feet of commercial use. This space will include a restaurant, an event space, an 18-key hotel, as well as a rooftop pool and bar. The scope of work for the project is significant and includes a total replacement of the existing building systems, a full interior build-out, roof and masonry replacement, as well as site work and foundation repairs. In total, the project is a full gut rehab and rehabilitation of the building. The developer for this project is Hudson, Michigan Avenue owner, LLC. Its principals are Israel Donajay, a former player for the Chicago Bears, and Tibor Kellerman from Kellerman Kamano Investments. The total cost of construction is an estimated $62.5 million. If approved, this agreement authorizes DPD to provide up to $10 million in combined TIF funds as both a grant and a loan. In addition to these funds, the capital stack includes $10 million in equity, $37.5 million in lender financing, and $5.2 million in historic tax credits. As stated, the redevelopment agreement is structured to provide the developer with up to $10 million in TIF dispersed in 2 discrete ways. The first is a $5 million loan will be provided to the developer through an escrow with funds made accessible during construction after all other sources have been expended. This loan will have a below market interest rate of no greater than 4%. And the developer will begin making payments on the loan after the issuance of the certificate of completion. The loan will have a 30-year amortization schedule, but mature after 10 years, at which time any remaining principal balance plus accrued interest will be due. The city's debt will be secured by a mortgage on behalf of the city recorded against the property. The remaining $5 million in city funds will be provided as a grant associated with the cost of the restoration of historic elements. The funds will be paid out in 2 equal installments of $2.5 million, with the first made on the issuance of the CFC and the second at the 1-year anniversary of the issuance. Both sources will additionally be protected by provisions in the RDA that require that the project be continually operational for a term of 10 years and that they maintain occupancy for no less than, of no less than 75% of both the residential and retail spaces. If the developer violates these conditions or sells the property during the compliance period, the city has a right to recapture any previously dispersed TIF funds. Once completed, the interior of the building, specifically the ground floor restaurant, is expected to look something like this and have a speakeasy theme. And this is the exterior rendering of the property, which maintains the historic terracotta facade. You can also see the roof deck with the pool and restaurant above. And in an effort to maintain the historic character of the property, these elements will not be visible from the public way. Overall, DPD is highly supportive of the proposed project. It will not only restore a City of Chicago landmark and maintain the historic integrity of Motor Row, but it also advances a critical redevelopment site that has been a long-term priority for the neighborhood. It additionally has the support of a number of neighborhood and Chicago-based community groups, including the 2 that you heard from today, the Chicago Federation of Labor and Unite Here. And finally, the project will build on the broader citywide goal of establishing Motor Row as an entertainment district that supports and complements McCormick Place. For all these reasons, DPD is recommending the use of TIF to support the project. I'd like to thank the committee for your favorable request of this item. I'm also joined today by Israel Adonijay, Katie Jenke-Dale, and Ann Maroney from the development team, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from my colleagues on this? Yes, Alderman Lee.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And not a question, but a comment. I just want to, I'll be voting yes on this today. I'm excited for the opportunity for the area. Obviously, I live nearby. It's neighboring my ward, and looking forward to the addition and enhancement to this area. So let's vote yes on this, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Alderman Hopkins, we record you as being here for the quorum. Alderman Mitchell.
And as usual, Pat, Chairman, great project. That's the only comment. I echo the sentiments of Alderman Lee. Great project.
Thank you very much. Alderman Villegas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, quick question. So, how did this project, why is it a loan versus just a straight up TIF?
In reviewing the project and the overall budget, this is what we felt was needed, or what was the project needed $10 million gross. 5 million of it, our assessment was, could be through a grant. The other $5 million, like a lot of developers, there's just access to capital challenge these days. And when capital can be identified, it's incredibly expensive. And so we felt that we could advance the project, which was our goal, most effectively, in a way that, you know, maximize our role as stewards by saying, we'll give you the money that you need that you're missing right now, but we believe that your project can carry this debt without a grant. So it got the 5 million as a grant, which we didn't think they could carry. The 5 million as a loan.
Gotcha. No, this is a good project. I was just wondering how or the process for determining whether it's a loan versus straight up TIF. But no, this is an exciting project, and congratulations, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Alderman Moore.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions, because I know there's some people's concerns about using TIF money in what they don't consider blighted areas. But this is why I appreciate this being a loan, and that's something I can support. But I recall something like this happened in our community over in Inglewood. So how can we make sure that this loan gets paid back and not get lost between administrations? Because we had that happen once before, and I want to see it's in what documents that say this is a loan and have to be paid back within this time, and what is that time frame?
So it's the document, it's recorded in the document that is in the redevelopment agreement, which you're voting on today. So it's in that. It'll be executed, and after it's executed, it will be recorded against title. So it exists, permanently on the title until the redevelopment agreement is satisfied for the term of 10 years. So it's
if somebody from your office can pull that out for me. I know it's a whole bunch of pages in which this whole development agreement makes up, but if somebody can pull that piece out for me, that would be helpful. And on the side, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think I answer my own question. When we're doing projects like this, especially in the South Loop and downtown area, the stuff that comes to NOF is only new construction, right?
No, NOF can be new construction or rehab.
Okay, so and does this qualify for that? And if so, what estimated cost of NOF contribution to the NOF will come out of this?
I don't know off the top of my head if this is in an NOF qualifying area. My gut says no, it's not.
It's not.
So NOF wouldn't be an option for this project.
Your gut says no?
My gut says no, yes. Okay. I think it's because I'll confirm and I get you the answer through the chair, but I think things north of the highway are not in the area.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Alderman Hopkins.
Thank you, Chairman. Not a question, but a comment, and just to add my voice of full support for this outstanding project and commend you for your leadership. And just simply point out in a little historical perspective, this is a great example of an idea that is too powerful to die. Redeveloping and branding with the identity of Motor Row is an idea that's been discussed for 3 decades. It is not a new concept. And finally, significant progress is being made, and it's exciting to see. This is one of many steps that will lead to the complete economic revitalization of this community, not only for its longtime residents, but for new residents, new businesses. It's really exciting to see, and I'm pleased to vote aye on this proposal. It's an outstanding use of TIF money. This is exactly what TIF money is designed to do, to spark redevelopment and create a beautiful neighborhood for business and residents alike. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Donajay, would you please speak to your project so I don't have to? I think you do a great job of that.
Good morning. My name is Israel Donajay for the record. To Madam Chair, the committee, thank you. We embarked on this project 2017. I'm a South Looper. The vision was to add value to the entertainment district, Motor Row, bringing entertainment, bringing new F&B and life to the community. We're excited to partner with the city and really align in their vision and with the chairman's vision in bringing something special to this incredible neighborhood. We're also excited about bringing additional jobs and bringing value to those in the neighborhood that work hard to support their families and contribute to what makes Chicago so special. So we thank you for your support in this project, and we're happy to be stewards of the city's vision for growth and prosperity. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donajay.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to recommend approval of item number 4? So moved by Alderman Moore, recommending do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. And we'll report this out at our next city council meeting. Item number 5 is from the Department of Planning and Development, an ordinance concerning the extension for Loop Counterpoint Pace LLC to retain their services as program administrator for the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, also called PACE. And Tim Jeffries will report this out as well, the Managing Deputy Commissioner for DPD.
Yes, good morning, Chair Dowell, members of the Finance Committee. Once again, for the last time today, my name is Tim Jeffries, Managing Deputy Commissioner in the Department of Planning and Development. As the Chair said, this item requests your approval to amend the city's existing agreement with Loop Counterpoint Pace in order to continue their role as administrator of the city's Property Assessed Clean Energy, or PACE program. If approved, the ordinance would authorize DPD to extend the agreement for up to an additional 5 years. Given that PACE is a relatively newer program, Chair Dowell has requested that I provide the committee with a brief overview of the program. In brief, PACE is a financial mechanism that provides private property owners with access to private financing that can be used to make sustainable building improvements, such as the installation of high-efficiency building mechanics or renewable energy systems. Funds are provided as a loan that is secured by the value of the building itself and can provide up to 100% of the funding necessary to make these improvements. PACE allows property owners to make critical green building improvements without a large upfront payment, a key disincentive for many building owners to make these higher cost, sustainability-focused improvements. PACE loans are also structured around the fact that sustainability improvements often result in a net operational savings, so that terms can be set to match either the useful life of the improvement or the anticipated savings. Just a classic example of how PACE can work is that imagine a building's boiler breaks down. An owner typically may just make a lower cost repair to this operationally expensive and inefficient system. With PACE, however, that same owner could replace this aging boiler with a high efficiency system with no upfront outlay of cash. The repayment of the debt could then be sized to match the anticipated operational savings, resulting in a net neutral or even revenue positive transaction for the property owner. I'll also just note that PACE does not use any city funds. PACE is privately held debt with funds provided by a third-party financer. There is no risk to the city, and our role with the assistance of our administrator is simply to facilitate the transaction in accordance with state law. So PACE is currently operational in 38 states, and Illinois' program was originally authorized by the General Assembly in 2017. City Council then subsequently approved the creation of Chicago's program in October of 2018 as Illinois' first PACE program. As part of that process, state law required the city to identify and retain a third-party administrator to manage its program. DPD solicited bids for this role, and pursuant to a competitive request for proposals process, selected Loop Counterpoint Pace as the administrator. Loop Counterpoint Pace is a 50-50 partnership between Loop Capital, a minority-owned Chicago-based financing firm, and Counterpoint Energy, a national leader in PACE lending. Similar to PACE's project funds, DPD does not use city funds to pay Loop Counterpoint Pace in their role as administrator. Instead, they receive fees that are applied to the principal balance of loans that are paid when individual project agreements are executed. Loop Counterpoint's agreement with the city was originally executed in late 2018 for a term of up to 5 years, and it will expire in mid-August of this year. Should that happen, DPD would not reasonably have either the capacity or the legal authority to administer the program in accordance with state law and would be forced to shutter the program. To avoid that, DPD is requesting authority to extend the existing agreement for a term of up to 5 years. No other provisions of the contract besides the term length are being adjusted, and Loop Counterpoint will continue to administer the program in a manner that results in no direct costs to the city. If approved, the PACE program will continue to be available in Chicago for the wide variety of eligible project users that undertake PACE eligible building improvements. In general, these users include all commercial, office, and industrial buildings. Multifamily residential can also be eligible, but it's limited to properties containing 5 units or more. Eligible users can then use PACE funds to make a broad range of building improvements, provided they have a focus on conservation, sustainability, and resiliency. Some of these could be for things like building mechanical systems like HVAC, heat pumps, or chillers. It could also include things that improve the overall energy efficiency or conservation of a building, which can include automation, window or door replacement, insulation, water conservation, and even green roofs. As this also includes the installation of alternative energy systems, including solar and wind power. PACE is not just limited to the hard costs of these improvements, but funds related to soft costs can also be provided. Overall, there are a number of benefits to the PACE program over traditional conventional lending. Most significant is something I've already stated. PACE can provide up to 100% of the project financing. That's a term that is rarely provided for in conventional debt. Likewise, PACE is also highly flexible in how it's structured and is able to provide a wide variety of options to the property owners. A loan term could be anywhere from 5 to 40 years. Additionally, there's no prepayment penalties or fees associated with the retirement of the debt. It's also a stable and predictable form of debt. Loans are fully amortized, interest rates are fixed, there are no balloon payments. It's just what you see is what you get with the debt. And finally, because PACE is land secured financing, it relies only on the property itself as collateral. This means that the PACE loan can be transferred or sold when a property is sold. It also means that there is no personal guarantee requirements or liquidity requirements on individuals associated with the project. Both of those are very real hurdles to lending in neighborhoods with access to capital issues. And PACE could be a good tool to help address that. One particularly successful use in PACE in Chicago to date was the development of Amped Kitchens at 4801 West Dickens Avenue in the 29th Ward. This was the location of the former Zenith Radio and Television Factory, and Amped Kitchens redeveloped it as a 111,000 square foot commercial kitchen that's used by a broad variety of food-based manufacturers, both large and small. Amped used $4.6 million in PACE to modernize this 100-year-old building and its mechanical systems in order to make these significant energy and efficiency improvements. The figures of what they saved are up there. I don't really know what they mean from a practical standpoint, but from an operational standpoint, I do know that Amped is estimating that they'll provide up to $13 million in savings over the life of their project. Probably even more importantly is that this formerly vacant property is now the site of 150 jobs and 30 different companies, over half of which are either minority or women-owned businesses. So given all those points, DPD believes that PACE is a promising program and is interested in seeing its continued operations. In order to do this, I'd ask the committee for its favorable consideration of this contract extension request with our administrator. I'm also joined today by Jana Weasley and Eric Alini from the Loop Counterpoint team, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Tim. We'll start out with Vice Chair Conway.
Yeah, hey, Tim. How much, and this might be for you all, in Chicago, how often has the PACE program been used? For a bit of background, I was a solar energy developer prior to becoming an alderman, and I don't recall ever hearing about a project in Chicago having PACE funding, save Amped Kitchens. So I'm curious how popular the program has been.
The short answer is not that it's not well used so far. There's only been 3 projects to date. Part of that is that I think when we got the contract in place, it was almost 2019. And then we had a buzzsaw of COVID, construction escalation costs, rising interest costs, which particularly hits this program hard. So it just hasn't been deployed that much. It's not for lack of trying. It's just, it's a tool that it works better in a more functioning construction economy, which we have not experienced since 2019.
As a follow-up, have you found that the administrative fees, applied by our vendor, have those been in line with the fees that are done nationally from other PACE vendors?
I'll let one of our administrators weigh in, but yes, we've made adjustments throughout and tried to get them as low as possible to be competitive, I suppose, and make sure it's a tool available to everybody.
Hi, Tim. Eric Alini from Counterpoint. Yes, the fees are in line with the rest of the nation, and in fact, we're in line with Cook County, who has a similar program for the rest of the county.
What are they, out of curiosity?
They vary depending on the size and shape of the project. So they'll go up to, I think they're capped at about 150,000. I remember. We'll get the actual fees over to Tim and then bring them over on a scale fee.
I can provide it to you through the chair.
Are they
later
are they done like on a percent of project basis or an interest?
Yes,
It's a percent of project basis. Yeah.
Okay.
But also has a functional cap.
Thank you.
I have no other questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members of the committee. Can you provide through the chair a list of the projects done by ward as well as who are the contractors associated with those projects?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Alderman Villegas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, does there have to be a clean energy component for this type of funding? Because this reminds me kind of like an ESCO, where the funding entity is banking on the savings in order to capture some of their fees and stuff like that. Is that accurate? Is that how this is being funded or how this works? Just curious.
It need not specifically have a clean energy component. It could be energy efficiency. For example, you could swap out all your openings, that you had old leaded glass or something, you're swapping it out for high efficiency new windows. Those savings inure to the property owner, and that might be how they pay for the debt associated with the project, but it need not have that specific cost saving requirement.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you. This is a very interesting approach. Interested in seeing some of the other projects that are funded by this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
While you're standing up there, can you talk about how you market this program?
Hi, my name is Jana Wesley. I'm with Loop Counterpoint.
Could you speak into the mic and say your name again?
Hi, my name is Jana Wesley. I'm with Loop Counterpoint PACE. We have marketed the program a number of ways, primarily to the stakeholders, engineers, architects, energy conservation consultants. We've also marketed to organizations like U.S. minority contractors, to QCDC, BOMA, other kind of organizations like that. And we've tried really hard to educate as many property owners as we can.
Thank you very much for that.
Yes.
Alderman Lee, followed by Alderman Riley.
Thank you, Chairman. Several of my questions have already been answered, but just to follow up on the marketing, I feel like this is a really amazing program that I wish more people would take advantage of. So one question's for Tim. How often are we, from like redevelopment agreements, TIF type programs, are we actually promoting this with project developers?
A lot.
Okay.
I think Congress Theater has PACE in its capital stack, and
that's great.
Constantly referring people back to Jana to see how we can make it work. And then, yeah, I mean, that's the short answer is.
Then my next question's around language accessibility. I have a large number of constituents for whom English is not necessarily their first language that own a lot of properties too. Some of these might be 5 units or more. I'd love to talk to you about the availability of language accessible marketing pieces and how do we get you all in our community a little bit more so that we can start utilizing this really great program.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I've got, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Lee. Alderman Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a couple of follow-up questions. One related to the marketing program. So I'm not quite sure I understood the answer. How exactly is this program being marketed and on what platforms? Why is it that most aldermen aren't familiar with it? Could we get maybe a more detailed answer on the marketing plan for this?
Could you
first started, we started educating as many stakeholders as we could, including aldermen. We'd met with a number of aldermen in the very beginning when it was first approved. And then when COVID hit, there was a lull. There was no interest. There was nothing. And so now we're revving up the program again. And hopefully with the continuation of our contract, we will be able to go out there and have as many meetings and seminars and educational events as we can to as many stakeholders as we can to continue the program. In addition, when we first started, we had one approved capital provider, and now we have 12. So we have 12 private capital providers that are out there looking for projects to use PACE as a funding source.
And the word stakeholder is a kind of a generic word. Could you provide a bit more specific around who you consider to be a stakeholder? I mean, obviously, hosting a community seminar probably is not going to have the same result as engaging with property owners and the folks who are actually in the business of managing buildings or energy portfolio or these sorts of things. So who all qualifies in your book as a stakeholder?
We're trying to focus on organizations that property managers, small multifamily unit building property owners, community organizations, trade organizations, contractors that do business across the city.
And does an actual marketing plan exist on paper?
We're revising our marketing plan right now.
You're revising it.
Or
well,
updating it.
If through the chair, we could get a copy of the existing unupdated plan, that would be awfully helpful. And just so I'm correct, according to planning, we've had a total of 3 projects take advantage of this program since its inception. That's accurate?
That's correct. 3 agreements.
And what were the fees collected by the program administrators, for each of those 3 projects?
I don't have that in front of me, but I can provide it in the
perhaps
list.
Counterpoint can, because they've received that money.
Pardon me?
I'm asking what fees you've collected for the 3 projects that you've administered the PACE program for here in Chicago. What's the total amount in fees that you all have been paid?
I don't have the total, but I can get it to 10.
Okay, that'd be helpful through the chair.
Okay.
We're being asked to renew a contract essentially, and granted the circumstances of COVID, the pandemic, other circumstances we've all endured the last several years could explain why so few people have participated, but it does beg the question, is the marketing program robust enough? Are we getting a return on investment? Are the fees we're paying to the provider of value to us as fiduciaries for the taxpayer? So these are the kinds of things that I care about. So if through the chair, planning and counterpoint could get us those answers, I'd greatly appreciate it.
I will absolutely do so. I just would like to affirm that the fees that are paid are not city funds. They're paid by the actual agreement or agreement holders, and they are tacked on. So it's not city funds directly.
Not tax dollars per se, but it's a program that we administer. That'd be very helpful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Riley. Seeing no more questions, can I get a motion to move item number 4? Is this? Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Item 5. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. This will be reported out at our next city council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Item number 6 is from the Department of Transportation, an ordinance concerning an amendment to the TIF appropriation ordinance for the University of Illinois Discovery Partners Institute infrastructure at West 15th Street and South Clark Street in the 3rd Ward. With us is Dan Burke, Managing Deputy Commissioner, Department of Transportation, and Ann Zhang, the Deputy Commissioner from the Department of Transportation. Dan?
Good morning, Chair Dow and members of the committee. My name is Dan Burke, Managing Deputy Commissioner, Chief Engineer with the Chicago Department of Transportation. This item requests City Council approval for administrative changes to the TIF appropriation ordinance approved by City Council December 12th, 2022 for the enabling infrastructure for the University of Illinois Discovery Partners Institute. Next slide. At the chair's request, I'm providing just a high-level overview of the Discovery Partners Institute for the new council members. The University of Illinois is in the process of building a $250 million innovation hub at 1501 South Wells Street to house the Discovery Partners Institute, or DPI. This new building will be approximately 200,000 square feet in size and include laboratories, classrooms, meeting spaces. The university has participation goals of 25% MBE, 5% WBE, and 3% VBE on the facility. Next slide. Over time, the DPI Innovation Hub will support an adjacent campus of technology-oriented developments. DPI is expected to generate $200 million per year in public and private sector technology research and development investments in focus areas including technology, talent development, applied research and development, and business building. Next slide. The DPI Innovation Hub is committed to equity of opportunity. It has a primary purpose of connecting residents from underrepresented groups with quality education and job opportunities in information technology, healthcare, transportation and logistics, and manufacturing. It is expected to facilitate training of 7,000 individuals annually. Next slide, please. Certain public infrastructure is needed to enable the operation of the DPI Innovation Hub. This includes a new segment of West 15th Street that will connect South Wells Street and South Clark Street and provide access to the DPI site for people driving, taking transit, walking, or bicycling. A safe and effective new 15th Street connection between Wells and Clark will also require realigning the railroad infrastructure used by Metro along its Rock Island district and creating a new rail grade separation structure over the new 15th Street. These public infrastructure improvements must be ready concurrently with DPI's opening in 2026, and implementation through CDOT is necessary to meet this timeframe. Next slide. The ordinance that was approved by City Council in December authorized the CDOT Commissioner to negotiate, execute, and deliver intergovernmental agreements with both the University of Illinois and Metro to design and build components of the public infrastructure in close coordination with CDOT. The ordinance also calls for the city to apply enhanced 30% MBE, 10% WB commitments on this infrastructure rather than the ordinary 26 and 6 goals. This includes any work to be contracted by the university or by Metro. Next slide. The DPI ordinance passed council December 12th, 2022. The ordinance considered here today will provide an amendment to clarify that the TIF project funds are excluded from the definition of incremental taxes and available incremental taxes in the RDA. Second item, an amendment providing the commissioner authority to restore these 3 infrastructure items to the original developer RDA if they are not completed by the University of Illinois and by Metro. Also, additionally, an amendment separating the University of Illinois and Metro IGA so that they may proceed independently, and an amendment revising Metro's M&WB participation requirements to 30% DBE. Metro's DBE program is mandated by its enabling statute, the RTA Act. Thank you for the committee's consideration, and particularly to Chair Dow for her support and guidance as the DPI project and its infrastructure needs have developed. As this work progresses, CDOT, DPD, and DPI will continue our ongoing coordination with the adjacent community. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have, and also with me here today is Ann Zhang, the Deputy Commissioner from CDOT, Kumar Kantala, the Innovation Hub Director, and Ebony White, the Assistant Director of Capital Projects and Programs with the University of Illinois, and Shanta Williams, Assistant Deputy Director with Metro.
Thank you very much, Dan Burke. Alderman Laspada.
Thank you so much, Chair. And this is very much a through the chair request, but I would love to understand the design better, particularly any pedestrian and cycling infrastructure attached to the design.
Certainly, we'd be glad to provide that through the chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Laspada. Alderman Lee.
Thank you, Chairwoman and Alderman Laspada. I actually took a tour of the new Wells Wentworth connector, and the bike lane is off the street. It's raised and on the sidewalk. It's beautiful. And once it's open, everybody will love it. I'm a big fan of this project. There's so much going on in the third ward. You're making the rest of us look bad.
Actually, it's actually, we share.
I know we do.
We
And
share.
I was gonna say, and again, this is something else that we're very excited about. This abuts basically Ping Tom Park. And I want to compliment the team at DPI. I've been involved in several phone calls. They've been great about reaching out to the community and really being very collaborative. So I'm excited for the opportunity for all of our communities to take advantage of this really state-of-the-art research and development facility. A quick question for you on bullet number 3. Can you just explain what that means? Amendment providing commissioner authority to restore these three infrastructure items to the developer RDA if they are not completed by the University of Illinois and Metro. What does that actually mean?
Certainly, Alderperson Lee. What it means is if this ordinance allowed us to remove these infrastructure items from the original developer RDA and complete them now working through intergovernmental agreements with Metro and the University of Illinois. If for some reason those components are not completed, we don't anticipate, it's highly improbable, but if for whatever reason that did happen, it gives the commissioner authority to restore those components to the developer RDA. It was a condition from the developer to release these from their RDA. They need assurances that it will get done.
Okay, got it. Thank you for explaining that. That was my only question.
Thank you. Alderman Villegas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is a very exciting project, and I'm glad that it's moving from Champaign up to Chicago. These TIF dollars are being used for the infrastructure improvements, sewer, water, streets, et cetera. Is that what it's being used for?
Yes, it is. Yes, they are.
Okay. And then the actual construction of the building, is that University of Illinois that's doing, or the Capital Development Board?
Capital Development
Board. This Capital Development.
CDB,
Board.
okay. All right, cool. Thank you. That's it. Congratulations, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We got to stay on the Capital Development Board.
Again.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Alderman Hopkins. See you sitting all the way over there. I can't see
Thank you,
you.
Chairman Dell. I hope it doesn't happen, but in the event that the RDA has to be amended again to fold these projects back in, obviously that'll have meant something will have gone wrong. Will they then be funded by TIF proceeds again at that point?
Although highly unlikely, if these were not completed, and would be restored to the original RDA. The original RDA terms would be in effect for the completion of those items.
Okay, so the answer is yes, then it would be
Yes.
TIF funded at that point. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, is there a motion to recommend approval of item number 6? Alderman Laspada recommends do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. We'll report the do pass motion at our next city council meeting. Item number 7 is from the Department of Water Management. It's an ordinance amending a November 7th, 2022 ordinance with respect to the authority to execute documents for a proposed $350 million WIFIA loan to the city from the United States Environmental Protection Agency. This is a direct introduction that was emailed to everyone else. And because it is a direct introduction, I would ask the James McDonald? You're reporting on it? Yes. Okay, we didn't have your name, Brendan. Brendan White from the Finance Department will be reporting out on this and giving you the reasons why this is a direct introduction, because we don't like direct introductions, so we have to have a reason for it. And we have a good reason today. Mr. White.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brendan White. I'm an assistant commissioner in the Department of Finance. Thank you, Chairman Dowell, and thank you other members of this committee. The ordinance we have before you today is a purely administrative amending ordinance. It would amend Article 3 of an ordinance passed in November 2022, authorizing the city to enter into a low interest loan with the United States Environmental Protection Agency. The loan would be for $337 million and would help fund the public side of the Department of Water Management's lead service line replacement program. The scope of this ordinance is limited to expanding the list of city officials who are authorized to sign the loan agreement on behalf of the city. The original ordinance, as written, only allowed for the chief financial officer to execute the final loan agreement. This ordinance would expand that authority to the commissioner of the Department of Water Management, the city controller, and the mayor. If passed, this ordinance would allow the city and the United States Environmental Protection Agency to close on this loan in short order. If we were to do this as introducing it in July and passing in September, that would run up against the federal fiscal year ending of September 30th. So we are asking to approve this ordinance so that the city and the EPA can close on this loan in short order.
That's not the reason. Right, that is not the reason that we have this as a direct introduction, though. Can you explain the reason why this is a direct introduction, Brendan?
Yes, so the current chief financial officer, before she joined the city of Chicago, had some involvement with one of the financial advisors who worked with the city on this loan agreement. And so to avoid any possible issues with the ethics ordinance, the current chief financial officer will not participate in the negotiation or execution of the necessary documents. So an amending ordinance is necessary to expand the list of city officials who are able to sign the documents on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Alderman Irvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you're expanding to the mayor, the comptroller, and the commissioner.
That's correct.
So two things. One, traditionally, these have been done by the CFO. Why was the decision made to put vested interest in the department that's actually doing the work as well?
Why was the initial decision made, or why are we trying to expand it now?
Why are you trying to expand it into the department? It was a little different when that was handled by the financial side of the house, because that is who is handling the financial transactions. Now you're moving that decision-making authority into the department. Where's the oversight between the department and everybody else in this conversation? Because again, if it's in the department is one thing versus someone outside the department reviewing and doing some things with that. So that's why I'm asking the question, why the decision to vest any authority in the department itself?
So the Department of Finance is still going to maintain full oversight over this loan. The loan terms have essentially been fully negotiated already. So under this circumstance, we're not, this is a very unique circumstance, and unfortunately, I'm just not able to sign the loan documents in my position as CFO, given that I had a former involvement with this when I was at PFM Financial Advisors, who's one of the firms that did some work on this and has done quite a bit of work.
That I get that. I'm
So
trying to understand why in the department.
Yeah, we're not setting a precedent here saying that going forward, when the city does WIFI loans or other water revenue bonds, that this is going to be the choice going forward. But for the ability to easily and quickly execute the loan, the opinion was that it was a good idea to add multiple signers, including the department, such that we can get it done quickly while the market is favorable. We have seen interest rates move a little bit more favorably for us and would like to be executed quickly. And so this is really about having available, additional available signers so we can execute without further delay. It's not going to be a precedent, though, for going forward.
That's not satisfactory. I mean, our market is moving in such a way that one person is going to hold the whole city hostage. I philosophically just disagree with the issuing departments having the ability to sign off on things to that magnitude, even though the Department of Finance may oversee it. That could be after the fact. I mean, we do need to have some level of separation in these particular conversations. And if you aren't able to do that, then the comptroller if it were the comptroller and the mayor, I wouldn't object to that. But investing that authority into the issuing department, I do have some challenges with. Now I'll just leave that alone. That's point number one. Point number two is this is in relation to the lead service line replacement process, and what is the plan? I guess I'll call it the buy-in plan, for lack of a better term, and how are we including smaller MBE, primarily African American contractors, into this conversation?
That's a good question. We have Commissioner Chang with the Department of Water Management who's able to address that.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Alderman. So we're doing a lot in that realm. This is, lead service line replacement is a huge opportunity to bring diversity in contracting, to bring equity into our program. So in terms of these programs, we started out with some regular contracts and have then grown and evolved with our latest grouping of contracts for our breaks and leaks related lead service line replacement to divide up the city into 8 zones, including 6 sort of medium-sized and 2 small, to try and bring diversity in. And as well, we also work with the risk management section to find some very reasonable insurance requirements, things that a lot of the smaller, more diverse businesses are looking for in terms of changes to the contract requirements. And so we were actually able to, it's in the process of signature right now, but once it is awarded shortly in the next couple of days, 9 of those 16, it's 8 geographic zones with an A and a B, 9 of the 16s have primes that are MBEs. So we are getting there. Next step
now, how many of those primes are African American?
None of them are African American. They're Hispanic and Asian right now.
So you mean to tell me you're about to spend $330 some odd million and not one Negro is going to get a dime of that?
That is not correct.
We have no black prime contractors on this job? None?
We have subs. But let me finish, Alderman, please. There's multiple contracts. So the next round is the census-based tracts contracts next year that are block level. And with the way that the state has changed the EPA funding, it's at the census tract. So we're really excited about that because it's based on environmental justice metrics. So the census tracts that have the highest scores for environmental justice get the funding. And so we'll be able to issue some very small, direct contracts in areas that have the most environmental justice needs. So we expect that to really bring some additional diversity as well.
Yeah, but so you're asking us to, let me just hold back here. So hold on. So you're asking us to say wait next year for contractors to be included in on a hope and a prayer when we have something on the table today that could generate significant economic benefit in the Black community in the city, and we're being told, oh, come next year because we're gonna have some crumbs coming down the pipeline next year. That doesn't work for me. I mean, this is, to me, this is what I look at. I look at a lead service replacement job is 400 or 500 small jobs, and there's a great opportunity to bring in small contractors to do this work. Now, maybe they need some oversight, maybe they need some help. We have to be intentional about how we're going to help communities in the city, and to say a whole third of the population of the city isn't available to participate as a prime contractor, I got a challenge with that. I mean, not alone with the philosophical difference that I have in the ability for a department head to sign off on a contract of this magnitude, but again, and now tell me now that I can't even participate? Hell, what the hell are we here for? I mean, this is, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but we need to rethink this way this is being done, because for $330 some odd million project to go, and out of 8 zones, there's not one Black prime contractor. That's crazy.
But we do have $9 million in African American. It's just not a
$9 million, and you're jumping up and down over $9 million out of $335 million.
It's a start.
Am I supposed to be happy about that?
It's a start. We also we have multiple.
It's a start. Whoa. I'm done. Go ahead. Do your thing.
Thank you, Alderman Irvin. Thank you. Alderman Lopez, followed by Alderman Curtis, followed by Alderman Villegas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And Again, good morning, members of the committee. Why was the wording just not inclusive of the phrase "or your designee," as opposed to adding two additional departments to address this?
I believe it was just a oversight when drafting the ordinance.
I mean, we have bigger issues here than how the ordinance is worded. And so.
Well, I think that's our job, Madam Chairman.
So that ordinance is already being amended to take out the commissioner of the water department.
It is.
And so the question that you raised is also something that we're going to ask the law department to look at as well.
So, Madam Chairman, if it's going to be corrected, are we tabling this item?
I haven't made that decision yet. I'm still going through all of the questions from my colleagues, but I'm just telling you, that's one thing that I know the law department is prepared to do.
Okay, sorry, I must have not heard that because.
No, I was going to say that in response to your question. I just wanted you to know that that was already in the works.
So then, Madam Chairman, then can I move to table this item till we see what the actual final version is that'll be from the works?
We'll get to that point, but I want to get the rest of my colleagues. I want to hear what the rest of my colleagues have to say about this issue. So will you hold your motion?
Fine, I will hold my motion to table until after all comments.
Thank you.
Now, I do have actually a question with regards to this matter that's at hand. Understanding my colleagues' frustration about participation, I think the other question with regards to our lead replacement is the fact that how much work isn't getting done on this matter. And if we could have the department explain how many millions of dollars in projects are pending from our IEPA litigation and all of the other unresolved issues before we can move forward, I think that would be very beneficial as well.
So I think you're asking about water mains and sewer mains, but that is a different funding bucket. I think the amount of work that we're doing with lead service line replacement is actually on track. So we have 6 programs. I'm not sure if everyone got the handout, but the 6 programs involve, of course, the equity one that everyone's heard about, the homeowner initiated one, the daycare in low income neighborhood program, but then we also have lead service line replacement alongside water main and sewer main. We no longer do just water main or just sewer main because they have those connections. So we have about 3,000 that are either completed or scheduled in process of our 4,500 goal for the year. So we're actually on track.
So in December, Madam Chairman, the Sun-Times reported that only 280 out of 390,000 service lines had been switched. Lead water pipelines had been switched. So I think that there is plenty of work that's in question that's not getting done. And understanding that we are now offering priority for leaks, cracks, and daycares, I think that we're still far from where we need to be, and would like to know if we can have through the chair by ward where all of these service lines are, so we could see in each ward how many service lines there are, how many have been replaced, and the total cost for replacement per ward. Thank you. And I'll wait to renew my motion.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Good questions on the through the chair requests. These are also questions that we'll make sure that everyone gets this information when it comes out. Point of information, Alderman Quinn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just add one item to that list, and that's the time for restoration. So parkways in the 13th Ward are ripped up and they're not getting restored in a timely manner. So that's something I'd like to know.
Alderman Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Commissioner, this is near and dear to me. We always talk about the lead water replacement program. I think it's being done correctly. It's we talk about it all the time, but I want to piggyback off of is one thing that I don't like about it. And again, you know, we talk about it all the time. And I'm gonna piggyback off of Alderman Irvin. You know, this program means jobs forever. I mean, it means careers for a lot of people, and it's gonna affect every alderman and their constituents for probably the next 25, 30 years. The only issue I have with this right now is the way it's written. The companies that's bidding, you're asking them to bond like $50 to $70 million, which is way too high, especially for minority companies. They'll never be able to get a bond like that. So how can we lower that number?
Yes, thank you for that question. That's something we've been working about with risk management exactly on that. This last round of funding, we were able to lower it, but I would love to see it go even lower because 100% agree with you.
Yeah, $57 million. I mean, I'm with Alderman Irvin. I mean, there's no way you'll get the participation out of this program if it's not. All right, that was it, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Curtis. I want to acknowledge Alderman Burnett. We'll add him to the quorum count for today. Alderman Villegas, followed by Alderman Mitchell, followed by Alderman Burnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, our goal is 4,500 a year for lead service line replacements.
That is the goal for 2023. It goes up as much as 9,000 a year in the coming years.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say at 4,500 a year will be done by 21/11. So obviously, I hope that we can speed up the process. I mean, Chicago is #1 in lead service lines in the country. #1, almost 400,000 lead service line replacements. And I can tell you that right now, the city has not been aggressive in dealing with this issue and getting the lead out. All you have to do is look at Newark, New Jersey, where they were able to completely remove their lead service lines in less than 5 years. And at the same time, create great opportunities for minority, women-owned contractors, veteran-owned contractors, also allow for the ability for minority women to get exposed to the trades and allow for great opportunity. So I would think that this is a huge opportunity, a great jobs opportunity, and the city needs to move expeditiously to get the lead out, but also have an opportunity to create generational wealth, as we see that this program is going to probably last at least 10 to 20 years if we get more aggressive in the removal process. The $350 million that we're looking for, is this a match at the federal level? Because I know that at the federal level, our own Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth advocated for $15 billion in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Just wanted to know where the 350, is this a match of some sort, or how's this 350 million going to be used?
Yeah, so this would be a loan from the federal government as opposed to a grant of money. So we would pay it back over, I think the last payment would be in 2056. And the way it works is that we present WIFIA with a project, and they will pay for up to 49% of the total project. So I think this loan amount would represent about 39% of the total project amount, and the remaining 63% would be funded from either city water bonds or federal grants of other kinds, or other loans with the Illinois Department of Environmental Protection Agency.
So right now, the funding source to pay back the bond, these loans will be through the water bill, in essence.
Yeah, this will be repaid with water rates.
Okay. And so, Commissioner, you mentioned that 9 of the 16 were MWBE that have how many of those are Latino, Asian? We know the African-American number, which is 0, but.
We have, of those 9, I'm sorry. I'll get details through the chair, but we have.
It's 0.
What was that?
Are you asking for primes?
Yes.
Yeah, there's 9 of the 16 primes are MBE. Is that was a question? And then you said how many of us are Hispanic? We'll get that through the chair.
Okay.
Point of information, Alderman Vasquez. We'll get all of the MBE, WBE by ethnicity through the chair.
So again, this is a serious issue that we have a great opportunity to rectify and really create some great opportunities for minority women-owned vendors. But I don't see the department, I don't want to say the administration because they've been here 60 days, but I think this new administration has a great opportunity to really grab this and get the let out. We've been talking about this for years.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have this this huge jobs bill here just ready to go just frustrates the heck out of me. And so, you know, I have an ordinance that I introduced that I'll be sending around to my colleagues to take a look at it. It really kind of mirrors what Newark, New Jersey did. Now, obviously, we can't get it done in 4 or 5 years, but I can tell you we'll get it done before 2111 if we're able to do that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Villegas. Alderman Mitchell, followed by Alderman Burnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I absolutely want to echo the sentiments of our Chairman Irvin. For the last 8 years since I've been here, we've been championing MBE participation, myself, Irvin, Gil, and yourself, Chairman. And to hear what we just heard about, you know, from the commissioner who's been here for the last over 4 years, and know that we actually focus on that and to not have something put in place, like very thoughtful about doing this before we proceeded is kind of a slap in the face. So we need to get this on track. I think the word you used was we have 9 million out of 350. That's absolutely unacceptable, and that shouldn't even have been stated today. But want to echo those sentiments. I understand we're going to get information through the chair, so I'll be looking forward to that. The second thing, with respect to the lead service line replacement, there's 6 different programs, and I don't think that we as aldermen, let alone our constituents, are really understand what's going on here. I know one of the programs is the homeowner initiated, the daycare is the lease and breaks. I know that this has not been adequately discussed or laid out because we're having a lot of issues in our wards. One, we don't know who's coming in our wards, and we don't know when. We don't know what program it's under, because from what I understand, the program has each program has a certain consultants. Like I know Cabo is under one of these 6, and other firms on other ones. We have to know that as aldermen, that this shouldn't even come in our wards without us understanding thoroughly how this is. To Alderman Quinn's point, the restoration in my ward has been such that it has caused a public safety issue because somebody just thrown asphalt down to just cover it up. That is totally unacceptable. And I think, Commissioner, you probably already know about that. Yeah. So I definitely do not want to see that in my ward. I don't want anybody to see that in their ward. We have menu. This has to be coordinated with our menu. We have people gas projects, should be coordinated with people gas. I've had fiber optic projects where my streets are getting broken up. None of this is being coordinated, and it makes us look like the most inefficient city in the world. So I think we need to take a step back and stop just throwing darts at a board. We're better than that. And I definitely, and I think my colleagues will share the same sentiments. Saturday, I visited one of my streets that just got resurfaced 2-3 days ago. They just cut it up for a lead line replacement. That makes absolutely no sense, particularly because from what I understand, when the street is resurfaced, it automatically is a 2-year moratorium. That shouldn't have never happened. So I can go on for days about this, but
please don't.
But it's frustrating. But
Got you.
Chairman, you threw me off. I'll end it there, but you guys get where I'm going with this.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Alderman Burnett, followed by Alderman Vasquez.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. First of all, Commissioner, I want to thank you very much for coming to my office, making sure that we were up to date on the flooding incidents. And I was shocked that you came there personally, so I really appreciate it. I concur with my colleagues on some of the concerns that they have, in particular in reference to the minority contracting. And I kind of came on the tail end of it. I know you said that $9 million of the $350 million would be for minorities. And I know I'm kind of confused because I know that Alderman Irving asked about primes. He asked how many primes, how many minorities, and in particular African Americans, are even subcontractors. Is that all of the MBE, WBE is 9 million?
Thank you for your question. No, that's the African American portion. There's 329 million in all the contracts beyond just the 16 for breaks and leaks that are MBE, WB, or VBE. So like overall, the lead service line programs, not just breaks and leaks, is 329 million.
Is 329 million BE, WBE, or?
Correct, and VBE.
MBE, 329 million. So he was asking about the primes, and the primes is 9 million.
So of the primes specifically for breaks and leaks, which is what Alderman Irvin was referring to, that 9 of those 16 zones are MBE.
So 9 of the 16 zones are MBE. Okay, fantastic. Then also, Commissioner, I just wanted to ask, in reference to the lead removal, and I think I just had Joel and the other young lady on my cable show, and you know I learned a lot. But can you tell me how the lead program, in reference to this flooding that's going on, how are we placing the lead pipes? Does it have anything to do with helping with this natural situation that we have going on?
Unfortunately, the lead service line program doesn't really impact the flooding, other than sometimes when we do a lead service line replacement, if the private drain is broken, we may have to replace the private drain at the same time, which could potentially help. But for the most part, it is not related.
Okay, and how and I understand my colleagues' concern, because hopefully outside of us trying to get this loan, and I don't know how much interest we're going to pay on this loan. Can you tell us how much interest we're paying on the loan?
So the interest rate has not yet been set. The last time I checked, it would be around 4.15%. In May, the city issued publicly offered water revenue bonds for new money projects, and that rate was about 4.9%. So this is a more favorable interest rate than a public bond offering would be.
Okay, fantastic. And so so any of those federal grants that we may be getting, would that cover any of this? Would that be able to help to pay off some of these loans?
So where we have federal grants, it wouldn't be used to pay off this loan, but it's all part of the bigger picture of lead service line replacement. We have the CDB, the Community Development Block Grant, for the equity program, and then we also have a small bit of principal forgiveness for the daycare program from the Illinois EPA. But then eventually next year, the Illinois EPA will be finally releasing some of the IIJA money, and that would come potentially in July 2024, where we would see some principal forgiveness.
Commissioner, can you do me a favor? Because I had to look at Alderman Lopez when you talk. Can you stand up? Because he's so animated over there, and he keep moving around.
Certainly. So just to recap that, so we have the bigger picture of lead service line replacement, and where we're getting grants or principal forgiveness, which is essentially a grant, is equity program through the Community Development Block Grant. a little bit about 4 million of principal forgiveness for the daycare in low-income neighborhoods program. And then next year, finally, Illinois EPA should be ready to release to anyone in Illinois IIJA money in July, and that would be in the form of principal forgiveness for a portion of the work.
Thank you. And then, so we're talking about 350 million now, or 320 something million, whatever. And overall, how much is it all going to be? How much are we trying to spend on all of this with the grants and everything else that we're trying to get from the federal government? What's going to be the total spend?
Well, if you're looking at the entire lead service line program, right, to replace all 400,000, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be about $8 billion.
$8 billion.
We're hoping to decrease that projection as we go, find efficiencies, but that in theory is the total amount.
And then how many years do we project that this may take us to deal with?
So right now through the state, we have 50 years. If we were to ever hit the level that's considered elevated for the federal government, we'd have 33. But we have federal legislation that's coming in most likely in the fall that will probably change that yet again. So somewhere between those two ranges, hopefully we'll never hit the maximum for the federal, but 50 is a good estimate for what we have right now for regulations.
So on average, how much you think that the department will be spending on this per year? How much work?
Well, I can provide some of that through the chair. If you look at the pamphlet, we have it's a ramp up to when we get to 9,000 per year. So I guess if we do 9,000 times approximately $25,000, not doing the math in my head right now, but you kind of we're ramping up to it, and then we'll have a somewhat steady state after that. So we can sort of provide that same graph where we have the number in dollars.
So what you think, $1 billion, 500 million a year, or what? Approximately how much a year?
I have to double check the numbers. I don't want to give you something incorrect, Alderman. But I'll get that.
It will be more than this 350
Oh, yes.
million.
Yes, this is just 5 years for a portion of the work on the public side. This does not represent the majority of the funding that we're getting.
Okay.
This is just something coming from WIFIA specifically.
So I think these are great opportunities for the city and federal government, state, everyone to be prepared. So I've always been concerned about doing these lead pipes and not having people ready to work, right? Or not having people ready to do the work. So this is a great opportunity for us to try to prep people for these things before more money come down and we find ourselves in a position we don't have enough folks to be ready to do it. So we need to do something aggressively with prepping people, whether it's through training. I know you all got that program going on with the laborers right now, and prepping people for the training, but also trying to help other folks to become contractors in relationship to this, because it's going to be so much work. And to keep the equity going on, we have to make people ready, right? Or you're going to find yourself getting beat up every year, or whomever's in your position going to get beat up every year because it won't be enough equity because we haven't prepped people to be ready for this.
Absolutely. And actually at the state level, for the discussions that are going on there's just simply not enough for the entire state of Illinois for how many lead service lines we have. Not plumbing contractors, not minority plumbing contractors. So workforce development is key. And, we've been meeting with folks like Hire 360 to try and get the word out because it's a great time to become a plumber.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Burnett. Alderman Vasquez, followed by Alderman Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to add my voice to the other alders that have very real concerns about this. I mean, one, because I would have imagined for this kind of conversation, the council would have had briefings to talk through a lot of this information, which we have not. I'm concerned about just how we regularly track progress. Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? We had a meeting a number of months ago with DWM where we kind of got a sense of where it was playing out in our ward. But I think, conversations about regular cadence as far as reporting makes sense, because if we're saying it might take 50 years to get this done at the city level, the thing it can't escape me is that you're talking about a kid who's born now, still having to drink that water for 50 years or however long they're going to be in that home without finding real solutions. And for us to not have the tracking to understand the progress on a more regular fashion, I think is just generally something that I think we need to have more conversations as a council. I think before something like this comes to a committee, we need to have the necessary briefings, and that did not occur. Just to double check something, because you mentioned something like, sorry, Commissioner, $25,000 per each of the lead line replacements and 9,000 of them a year. Is that the number you the general math you stated? Correct. So that's 225 million a year. We're talking about 350 in a loan to potentially cover some of that, which feels like a huge delta as to what you're going to need to cover that. How does that boil down to your taxpayers?
So on the public side, so there's two different really buckets, right? The public and the private side, we have to draw really from different, areas for those funding sources. On the public side, we think we're good for a little while. We, think that water rates will cover it given the existing CPI, the Consumer Price Index. On the private side, there's definitely a delta. We are continuing to advocate at the state and federal level for things like those IIJA funds that, everyone thinks we have already, but we don't. So those, on the private side is where we have to continue to be creative, look at CDBG funding, look at principal forgiveness to continue to fund that because we want to keep these programs free.
Now, when you mention little while, what is that timeline? Because little while is a subjective measurement.
I'll have to double check. I believe it was at least 2 decades.
Okay, because that doesn't feel like a little while to me, but I understand it's all, again, subjective. I also have concerns just about work getting done. Alderman Mitchell had a really great point about sometimes streets being taking forever to see any replacement or water main work. I have sometimes the opposite, where we have menu funds where we're looking to resurface roads that have been torn up completely, and then we're told we cannot because Department of Water Management has a block on it, which typically is 2 to 3 years, but now having been there a term, 2-3 years will pass and nothing has occurred. And so I'm trying to figure out what the process is when we don't know how long it's going to take for actual work to happen from Department of Water Management, so we can actually get these roads resurfaced, because it's got to be one or the other. And if we're just in a holding pattern in the middle, we're the ones that are front facing when it comes to the constituents, and they're not happy with either answer. So what does that look like as a process?
Yeah, thank you. So as we've had to sort of pivot and incorporate lead service line replacement in some of these projects, it has been challenging with timeframes, apologies. And as we continue to source the funding like this WIFIA for some of these projects as well, some of those have been in hold. So, I always encourage folks, if you have other plans, please let us know. We will release a hold and defer a project if that makes sense. We'll evaluate how old the main is, what are the break and leaks history, can we wait a little bit? And just to make sure that we're doing things right. We don't want to hold up a bunch of other work in the city.
Okay. Yeah, definitely want to make sure we're just having more regular communication, because that's been the experience. And again, when we're the ones who have to answer to our constituents, sometimes it's just not. Me saying apologies to them in an email ain't helping. I do think something that has been voiced, and this will be my last comment, time-wise, is every single time anything happens as far as money, whether it's a loan or somebody asking for a tax break or anything, the first question that comes out of this council is, where is the money going as far as our MPEs, our WBEs? And so it is just completely unacceptable, not exclusive to you, but anyone who comes here asking for any level of money to not have those answers on the front end is just completely unacceptable by this council. It's something we hear about all the time. And so I don't know how often we have to broadcast it. If you're going to ask for money and ask for the council to vote on things, have those numbers ready. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Vasquez. Alderman Riley.
Thanks, Madam Chairman, and I want to thank the Water Department for the PowerPoint slides they distributed, and I'd like to echo some of my colleagues' comments. An in-depth briefing would have been helpful on this, but I'm trying to piece this together with my lack of reading glasses, and I'm trying to understand. I'm looking at the, you have a chart that shows monthly lead service line replacements across all programs. And it notes where daycares have taken advantage, homeowner initiated equity, cumulative LSLR, and then leaks and breaks. And I noted that we really hadn't been doing any leaks and breaks reporting. Replacements And this requires residents or owners to report leaks, breaks, or repairs to water management through 311 to enter the program. I noticed we really didn't see any work done in that area until November 2022. Is there a reason why it wasn't until that date that we started to see the implementation of that replacement program? Clearly, it's ramped up quite a bit since. But why is that?
Sure. That was our pilot month. We began the pilot for leaks and breaks November, and then the state law took effect January 1st, 2023. And, we were trying to make sure that we had the funding set aside, aka WIFIA, to be able to help fund that program in the future.
And I also noted that the homeowner-initiated replacements remain relatively flat. And I know that the homeowner-initiated program, the benefit to the homeowner is that the program waives the standard permit fees up to $5,000 for any property owner. So excluding the fees, what would the typical property owner, homeowner need to spend to replace those lines?
It's typically about the same as what we see, about $25,000. It depends on how long their service line is. If your home is far away from the street or short, but that's about the average.
So we're going to waive up to $5,000 in fees, but the homeowner could be on the hook for as much as $25,000.
Correct. We do not expect a lot of people to be able to do that. To be fair, what that program is mostly for is if you're rehabbing a home, you already have a plumber there and you don't want to wait to see what programs you qualify for. That's the people that do that. We thought we'd get 50 to 100. Surprisingly, we got about 200, but that's not the main way that we're going to get lead service lines replaced in the city.
Got it. And again, I just want to make sure I'm understanding all this properly. The grants that you all have assembled, so separate from the loans, but the grants total about 65 million. Is that correct across all the different programs? So I'm looking at CDBG, I'm looking at SRF grants, Senate grant appropes, ARP grants.
Yes, that's about right.
For a multi-billion-dollar program. And you're also working to secure low-interest, long-term financing, and that stuck with me. I understand why. And what is low interest? Could you explain to all of us what low interest means? What I know what no interest is, but there's interest. So
I'll defer to the CFO's office.
Yeah, so we haven't yet set the rate on this particular loan yet, but once we are within a week or 2 weeks of being ready to close, we would set it based on the federal, state, and local government securities rate plus 1 basis point. So the last time I looked at that was about 4.15%, which compares to what we're able to achieve if the public offering of water revenue bonds. We sold some water revenue bonds in May, and that interest cost was about 4.9%. So there's about a 70 basis point difference or benefit from going with
so 4 to 5% is what is going to need to go back.
Yes.
Okay. And again, just so we're all clear here, to service these low interest state and federal loans, will water rates need to be increased for consumers here in Chicago?
In the current financial plan that incorporates this loan, we would not have to increase water rates beyond the automatic CPI increase every year.
Beyond the automatic CPI increase every year. And that's based on a projection where we're nailing CPI at what in the next 10 years on average, given we've just been struggling with an awful lot of inflation around here.
Yeah, the long-term Federal Reserve CPI projection is about 2.5%. So that's what we've been assuming, despite the recent couple of years of obviously higher than that.
So 2.5% is what we're projecting to be the 10-year average on CPI.
Yeah, and that's based on just the Federal Reserve forward guidance for inflation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Riley. Alderman Lopez, I would ask if you could table or drop your motion because the chair.
Madam Chairman, I withdraw my motion to.
Thank you very much. And as chair of the committee, I'm going to ask that we hold this matter because Alderman Urban, can you let me finish?
Oh, sure.
Hold this matter so that we can have more discussion on it. It is apparent that this program is a little bit off the rail, and we just need to focus on some concerns related to more conversations on minority participation, the timing and the process of this program, and the workforce preparation, and anything else that would come up. We also need to have additional briefings on this. Alderman Irvin.
Yes, to add to that, and I'm not sure if that's in our purview or not, but also that no contracts be awarded in these zones that have been contemplated by the department until we get something has to change in this respect, but that no contracts be awarded for this work currently.
Right, that's what this ordinance was directed to do, to execute, to allow someone other than the CFO to execute this particular contract. And by holding that, we are taking a look at the people who can execute in the future on this particular contract and the other issues that were raised here today.
Okay, that's as long as that's the understanding, I'm in agreement with that. Thank you.
Alderman Villegas, followed by Alderman Mitchell. I'd like to move on so if we can make
Madam
this
Chair, I just want to make sure. So did the process go through the CPO? Was this a procurement that was led by the CPO? I want to find ourselves in a position where there was a public bidding process, and then now we're saying, hey, forget the public bidding process. We want to do something different. That's all. I'm just trying to find out what the process is here.
Yes, this was a publicly bid contract.
Can you speak up, please, for the court reporter?
Yes, this was a publicly bid set of contracts. The breaks and leaks, that's what you're referring to.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just want to, I mean, if this was a publicly bid process and the results are the results, I think that if we want to make changes that we need to find a different way to do it. I don't know how the contract's being already advertised, low bid, and then now we want to change the results. That's all I'm saying.
I think that we're not trying to change the contract at this point. I think we're trying to have more conversations about how that money is going to be expended and allocated before the contract is signed. Alderman Irvin.
I mean, also the city does always reserve the right to rebid and throw out bids and come back with a different solution if it so chooses. That's well within our right. And that's why I asked that specific question, because I don't want to see contracts awarded and then the contract's awarded and now we're stuck. So as part of this conversation, I don't want to see any contracts awarded that will encumber these funds. And that's my point. Now we decide that the city decides that it's in the interest of the city to rebid or come up with a different solution. The city does reserve that right to do that, regardless if it's publicly bid. That's clear under the procurement statutes of the state. So I'm asking that those contracts not be awarded, because again, there's a definite amount of inequity in the contracts. So if we don't replace the lead this year, we don't replace it, because we're not going to replace lead and black folks not be involved in it. So
I want to be clear, and Commissioner, if you can answer this yes or no, what this ordinance is for today is to give the city the authority to enter into a loan agreement for the lead replacement service lines. You have not awarded contracts relative to the $350 million that this loan would secure.
That is correct. This is for the authority to add the extra name because the WIFIA authority was passed previously in general, but this was to add the extra name. And then the contracts related to this are, I think two of the 16 have been signed, but the rest have not been signed. They're in the process. They're with the mayor.
Okay, so we will look into that ASAP as we table this matter. Yes, Alderman Mitchell.
Okay, so as there's 6 different programs that the lead service line replacement encompasses, I want to make sure that and I'm under the understanding that each program has its own criteria, has its own contractors. Contractors are awarded in each one of these programs based on certain criteria. So I want to make sure that we look at this holistically going forward. So when to Chairman Urban's request that not just, I'm talking to everything we're looking at, from leaks and breaks, equity LSR, block level, daycares, everything hold up, and we look at this holistically, because a lot of these contracts have been awarded. And to quote Chairman Irvin, black folks hasn't gotten them.
So we will hold this particular matter in committee today. And my request is for you all to urgently get together with the Department of Water and the CFO office and have this discussion. Alderman Burnett.
Thank you. So, CFO, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I've met you before. What's your name?
My name is Brendan White. I'm an assistant commissioner in the Department of Finance.
Are you the
Jill Jaworski.
So you're the commissioner. You're
Jill
the
is the
CFO.
new CFO.
Okay.
She's the acting CFO right now.
All right. Nice meeting you. You haven't said anything since I've been
She
sitting
said
here.
something before you came in.
Okay, before I came. Okay. But anyway, nice meeting you.
Good to meet you as well.
So I just want to ask, and I like to meet with you personally, but I just want to ask, so we're talking about, so aren't we, I want to ask two things. One, does the timing have anything to do with the interest rates that we are getting a loan for? Will the timing affect the interest rates? One, and then two, I want to ask, borrowing the money and doing the contracts, aren't they like separate? Are those two separate things? They don't happen at the same time, right? Could we borrow the money and then deal with the contract stuff on the side in the interim? You know, if it's affecting the interest rates, that's what I'm concerned about. If it's going to cost the city more money to borrow the money, you know, I want to know if that's the situation.
I already asked the CFO that question before I decided to table this, and I was told that it would not have an impact or penalty. My desire is to have a discussion about this moving forward before we actually sign off on this loan agreement, because that's our leverage right now.
All right.
Let me just clarify one thing. We don't know what the impact on the interest rate will be. Interest rates move around, and we will not set the interest rate on this loan until we close it. My understanding is that, and Commissioner, please correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that based upon the cash position that DWM has, and the fact that there are other bond proceeds available, that DWM can continue to move forward with its projects for some period of time before we close this loan. If there's expenses that are incurred, that they can be reimbursed from the loan after it's closed. But you are correct that the authorization to enter into this loan is separate from entering into the construction contracts.
Thank you.
Alderman Mitchell, you had your hand up. I'd like to move on if I can. Okay. You finished? Okay. So we will hold item number 8 in committee. I'm sorry, number 7 in committee, and move on to item number 8, which is the ordinance concerning the granting of the Department of Housing Authority to cede excess and unallocated volume cap to the Illinois Housing Development Authority from the City of Chicago, tax exempt private activity volume bond cap. Thank you, CFO Jaworski and Mr. White. We now are joined by Tamara Collins from the Department of Housing. Somebody needs to log in. Do you log her in?
Oh. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tamara Collins with the Department of Housing's Bureau of Housing Finance. Today's ordinance is requesting approval to see volume cap over to IDA over the next 3 years in an amount of up to $150 million. So what does it mean to seed volume cap? The city of Chicago receives an annual allocation of taxes and bonds of approximately $270 million and has on occasion seeded cap to IDA and CHA. The authority to seed volume cap allows the city to allocate all or a portion of its excess and unallocated bonds to our partner agencies for the development of affordable housing. In 2022, the city, through the Department of Housing, seeded volume cap to CHA for the rehabilitation of 2 senior housing developments. The first one was Albany Terrace, which received an allocation of $67.2 million in bond cap. And then the second one was Irene McCoy Gaines for rehab as well. That was about $30.5 million in volume cap to CHA, and collectively that got us a preservation of 500 units of senior housing without any additional funding resources from the city. So historically, we had about $200,000 in volume cap that would expire every single year. In 2019, we saw some uptick on the use of volume cap for the tax exempt bonds due to the qualified allocation plan, or also known as the QAP. Some changes in there allowed us to see some more bond projects come to the table. However, we still have about $50 million of volume cap that expires each year. So as a result, we're requesting approval to cede this excess unallocated volume cap to IDA. Each year, the volume cap expires. We have a volume cap that expires every 3 years. So for example, volume cap for 2020 will expire at the end of this year if it is not used. Apologies. So instead of allowing the volume cap to expire, we're proposing that to seed that volume cap to generate and preserve more affordable housing than we otherwise would be able to. Bonds are generally always paired with some other resource, whether it's home, CDBG, or TIF. In this case, when we seed the volume cap to IDA or to CHA, we don't have to spend our valuable resources. We can use those for other projects within the city as well, and in areas that are most in need. Many of the proposals that IDA does in the deal in the city cost us nothing extra. IDA did about $1.2 billion worth of bond deals in the city between 2018 and 2019. Sorry, let me see here. Not sure. Between 2018 and 2022. And most of those were for the preservation or the new construction of multifamily affordable housing. Just some examples, Bryn Mawr Apartments at 1703 East 72nd. That was 100 units. IDA provided is a $20.6 million deal. IDA provided $12.3 million in volume cap. If we had done this deal, typically IDA allows about 10% of the total development costs in cash resources on their deals. So that would have cost us probably another $2 or $3 million to pair with this. So we were able to save that, and IDA could do the deal because they obviously have a lot more resources than the city. Another example is the Ogden Commons A1, which was both scatter site and a 92 unit building. That was a $35.5 million total project. IDA did volume cap of $17.3 million, and that was at no cost to the city. And then of course there was 900 West Randolph. This is a 300 units, 60 of the units which were affordable, $215 million deal for which IDA did $117.5 million. The recommendation, if approved, is to allow us to seed volume cap of up to $150 million to IDA over a 3-year period. if approved by this council, would pass by finance committee, would pass city council also in July, and then we would begin negotiations with IDA on specific deals on which they would need volume cap. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Vice Chair Conway?
Just to clarify, so we would seed $150 million over 3 years, and we would get approximately $600 million of that. You said about $200 million a year. So is that, we would seed about a quarter
of the 270 million that we get annually, we would seed up to $150 million to IDA.
per year or total?
No, total.
Okay.
And it'd be over a 3-year period. So they could come in and say, hey, I have 3 projects. I need $60 million in volume cap. We would see $60 million or $50 million in various increments, but the total would be $150 million and for a limited time, for over 3 years.
Wonderful. Tamara, this seems like a wonderful project, and I want to commend you for essentially activating an asset that we're not using to activate $150 million of affordable housing financing. It sounds like a wonderful thing we'll do and that we'll get no press, and it's a fantastic thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. A couple quick questions. Are private entities allowed to access this funding source?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Are private entities allowed to access this funding source?
No, this is private equity.
Can a private developer?
Right. So they'd work with developers. So IDA would take the volume cap. There'd be a specific project, and there would be a developer that would do the development. So they would then, just like us, it would be a conduit. It's actually debt on the project.
So I guess, can the city of Chicago serve as a conduit to private developers while we are in possession of this volume cap?
We do that already.
So then I guess my question is, why are we not doing it to its fullest so that we don't have $150 million in excess unused volume cap?
Because we don't always have the additional resources to pair with it. So when we do these
Such as what? Such as what?
I'm sorry. So for example, when we do a multifamily deal in-house, it may cost us, depending on how the deal is structured, it may cost us anywhere from $2 to $10 million in additional resources to do the deal. So that means it may be additional TIP in the deal, it may be additional home or CDBG in the deal. When we cede the volume cap to IDA, we don't have any money in the deal. IDA has more resources, they can do the deal completely themselves.
So why would we, forgive me, so why would we cede it to them when we can just as easily do it? Is there a benefit to them doing it?
So my point is, we don't have the resources to use all the volume cap.
So when you see, I've heard you say that twice. So what resource are we missing? I guess is the question.
We need more cash. We need more CDBG. We need more home. We need more AHOF money. The bonds that we are doing, the STSC bonds, that's certainly a resource. But we are limited in the amount of resources that we have.
So are those agencies able to request this money directly from, directly access this from the state as well, or does it have to come from us? Or wherever they get it from?
Which agencies?
IDA, CHA, everyone that's going to stand to benefit.
IDA has volume cap.
So they have their own.
So they have their own volume cap. And so, but they have more resources to pair with their volume caps to get those deals out. So then what they're asking us is, because we have volume cap that's expiring, instead of letting it expire, can we give it to them to do more deals?
So I get that part. So the question that I'm asking is because of the fact that every year I hear about how we're giving away this volume cap because we don't have the resources to use what we're given, right? And far be it for me to give anything back to anybody. But I think at some point, someone's going to ask us, well, why do you need so much if you don't have the capacity to do what we give you, right? So I guess the question I would have is, what is it you would need for us to be able to hold on to our volume cap so that we can actually address those housing issues that everyone says and that all of your recitals mention?
Mm-hmm.
But yet we have no way of actually impacting without turning it over to somebody else to handle on our behalf.
So for the Department of Housing, if we had those additional resources that I just named in in excess of what we currently get, we can certainly do more bond deals. We would only see this volume cap if we actually had the excess volume cap. If we don't have it, obviously we won't seed it. But what I'll say is since about 2017, we've gone from letting $200 million of volume cap expire to now about $50 to $60 million of volume cap expire. So we are using it more, but we still have volume cap that expires. For us, it doesn't make sense to allow it to expire when we can get a lot more affordable housing in the city than we otherwise would.
So would we have to increase our resources by 50% to be able to maximize that? Or do you have is there a breakdown you could provide through the chair of what we put our dollars to versus where we need to be so that we could be 100% usage of our volume cap?
I could provide the chair a list of projects in which we've done over the last few years that show how much how much additional resources have gone to bond deals that we've done in-house, and maybe give you a spread of what that increase has been over the last couple of years.
And where it needs to go. I think it would be very helpful, especially as we know that housing is an issue that this council, many members take seriously. And especially as we're getting ready to prepare for budget season, it probably would be great to see what you would need. I have no issue with giving the volume cap to agencies that are going to use it. Obviously, you want to see it, use it, don't lose it. But I don't see the reason why we necessarily have to always turn it over to somebody else, because I know we have the ability and the will, maybe just not the capacity yet. So I'd love to see that answered. And where in the ordinance does it say this is over 3 years? Because I couldn't find it.
3 years.
I'm sorry?
Over 3 years.
3 years. He said 3 years.
No, where in the actual ordinance you said it's all of the volume cap will be spread out over 3 years, totaling 150 million. Where was that in the ordinance?
I actually don't have a copy of the ordinance with me, but I believe it's.
Because I don't see a date in the ordained section other than from December 31st to February something or other, when you decide how much to seed. But it doesn't say how long this is going to be going on for, unless I'm missing it.
It should be in section 2.
So the last whereas clause on the first page where it says that effective.
30/25.
Yeah.
That's 3 years.
Until December 31st, 2025.
So it's in the recitals, not the be ordained part, right?
It's in the last whereas.
Yep. Oh, no, I see it now. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that, generally the whereases just state the facts of what we're talking about as opposed to the be ordained, which is what we're going to do. So I was just curious if it had to be down there as well. But maybe I'll leave that for the law department.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Alderman Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to, you had on the screen, I think it said from 2018 to 2023. 22. Can we get through the chair every project that was done with the money by ward?
I think so. I have a list of the actual projects with the addresses so we can sort that out by ward.
Thank you. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Taylor. Alderman LaSpada.
Thank you so much. So, thank you, Chair. Tamara, so it mentions, it talks about this being a cap transfer to IDA, but our one-pager makes a lot of reference to the CHA, who I know we've transferred cap to before, but is there any relationship to CHA projects with the IDA cap transfer we're looking at?
Yes, actually one of the projects that you saw, which was Ogden Commons, that was actually a CHA deal that was between CHA and IDA. The city was not a participant in the deal. So yes, IDA and CHA can work together, but there's still a developer on hand for a master developer for those CHA projects. So that is the private part of the deal.
Got it. Could you share with us, is this going to be, do you think, related to projects being considered in our QAP for this year, projects that are
No.
maybe,
No, so the purpose of seeding volume cap is so IDA can do their own deals that they work on in the city, separate and apart from the city of Chicago. So we still have our own volume cap as part of our qualified allocation plan, which we will do on our own. This is separate and apart from that.
is there any kind of coordination with them on like, no, it felt like you made reference to this, but projects we would be expecting to see close or in line to close?
Yes, so in order for them to get the volume cap, they have to identify to us which projects they're going to be working on and the timeline for which they would be closing. But those projects would not be receiving anything from the city.
Got it. The only other point that I was curious about, and again, it's a CHA point, so I don't know that it applies to IDA, because you mentioned in terms of the benefits that the CHA does not assess the 1.5% bond issuer's fee for its own projects. Is that also true with IDA, or do they issue that fee? And if they withhold or waive the fee, are those savings that are passed on to developers?
I need to check that for IDA. I know for sure CHA does not charge the fees. The city charges its own fees for the issuance of its bonds, but when we have to pair our resources with it, it pales in comparison. You may see a fee of $300,000, but if I have to give you $3 million to do it, it sort of pales in comparison of what we're providing to the deal. I can check that though and get that information.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Laspada. Seeing no more questions, can I get, yes, Alderman Moore.
Sorry, I thought you saw my hand. I apologize. I didn't raise it high enough. Just for clarification for me, and I apologize that I stepped out for a second, because then I just heard you say, you talked about the funds that it can be paired with. Can you provide that list of type of fundings that it can be paired with? You said grant or loan funds, typically, meaning the word typically, meaning then there are other things that it could be paired with. So can you provide that list to the chair so I can see what those funds that can be paired with? And then
For the ones we do, for the cities?
yeah, for
Yes, absolutely.
right. For us to keep, try to keep this money. So I know what funds that needs to be paired with, so we're not ceding it to anyone. And I know you said you went from 250 to 50, around to 50 million on average. So you're not expecting really 150 million. It could be. So that's why you're just asking up to 150. So it could be it could be 50 million you're probably expecting this year again.
So this is a one-time request for 150 over 3 years. So whatever we have.
150 over 3 years.
Yes. So whatever
So
we
it's about
have
50 million a year.
available in any of those given years, they could request that amount up to 150 million over 3 years. We've seeded volume cap to IDA before, but we seeded it in one full amount.
Right.
This time we're taking a little step back and saying, we'll do it over a 3-year period. Let us see which projects you're going to be doing, and then we will see volume cap as necessary and as needed.
Right. And then my final question is, as you're providing that list, could that include any city surplus funds that we have that we could pair that up with?
If we have surplus funds, we can pair that with the volume cap and
Right. So we're not losing it and ceding it to CHA or anybody else.
I mean, if we have excess funds, sure. I mean, it's a matter of when we get them and a matter of timing, though. I mean, when we have to underwrite bond deals, it takes some time to do it. So that if that money is not available right away, it may take a little bit longer to get those deals done.
Yeah, but if it is available, but if it is available,
we have money available, absolutely. We can do more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Alderman Cicho Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and really appreciate the information from the Department of Housing. I think generally is a positive development. I hear several colleagues, Alderman Taylor, Alderman Laspada, as well as Alderman Moore, with some questions. So perhaps the Department of Housing can do a follow-up so that we can work together and provide some of these answers, and we can analyze, of course, this other long impact analysis. So perhaps we can work with the Department of Housing to address some of the questions, especially in the long term. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Cicho Lopez. Seeing no more hands up, can I get a motion to recommend approval for item number 8? Alderman Rodriguez so moves. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. We'll report this out at the next city council meeting. Thank you, Ms. Collins. Item number 9 from the Department of Housing, an ordinance concerning financial assistance of a loan or grant funds for multifamily program or the STSC bond funds to Boulevard Apartments Preservation LP for acquisition and rehabilitation of affordable housing at 1930 through 1938 North Humboldt Boulevard, 929 to 935 North Sacramento Avenue, and 2212 through 14 North Sacramento Avenue in the 1st Ward and in the 26th Ward. We have with us John Lewis, and also in the audience is Joy Arguetti, the Executive Director of Bickerdike. Hello, Joy, good to see you. And Kenneth Figueroa, the Project Manager. This is a substitute ordinance, and so can I get a motion to accept the substitute ordinance, which was emailed to everyone? So moved by Alderman Knudsen. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The substitute is now before us.
Thank you, Chair Dowell, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Joseph Lewis. I'm a financial planning analyst with the city's Department of Housing. Before you today is an ordinance for the Boulevard Apartments Preservation Development that requests authorization for the issuance of up to $12,725,000 in multifamily loan or grant funds. As the chair mentioned, this is a substitute ordinance. When compared to the original, the substitute more fully provides a description of the project at hand in its Exhibit A, as well as a more complete description in the same exhibit of the manner in which funding may be structured, as these elements of the ordinance were inadvertently omitted by clerical error in the preceding version. Properties that are the subject of this ordinance are 3 separate vintage multifamily buildings distributed across the Logan Square and Westtown community areas. One of the properties is in the 1st Ward, represented by Alder Laspada, and the other 2 properties are in the 26th Ward, represented by Alder Fuentes. Shown here is the property at 2212 to 2214 North Sacramento Avenue in the 1st Ward, which contains 14 rental units. Shown here is the property at 929 to 935 North Sacramento Avenue in the 26th Ward, which contains 26 rental units. And shown here is the property at 1930 to 1938 North Humboldt in the 26th Ward, which contains 30 rental units. In total, this is 70 units of multifamily housing in 3 vintage buildings, with 60 units serving families in 2-bedroom or larger units. All 70 units serve households earning under 60% of the Chicago area median income, and 27 of these units are supported by rental subsidies from either the Chicago Housing Authority or the Chicago Low-Income Housing Trust Fund. The owner and developer, Northwest Side-based housing development not-for-profit Bickerdike Redevelopment Incorporation, acquired and rehabbed these buildings in the early 1990s with financial assistance from the city. After 30 years, many building systems and components have reached the end of their usable lives and require replacement. To this end, Bickerdike submitted an application in DOH's 2021 funding round with the goal of the long-term preservation and enhancement of these buildings' use as affordable rental housing that will be available in communities that are experiencing gentrification pressures. The project consists of the rehab of all 3 buildings and all 70 units in these buildings, with new roofing and masonry repairs, energy-efficient appliances, and energy-efficient furnaces and central air conditioners where there are currently no central air conditioning, full LED lighting packages, new windows, new hot water service, and improved indoor ventilation provisions. There will be an approximately 12-month construction period, with construction occurring at separate times with respect to each building. The scope of work shall necessitate the temporary displacement of the existing residents of these buildings for periods of less than 12 months. All such relocation activities shall occur in accordance with the requirements of the Federal Uniform Relocation Act and other relevant law. Tenants will be entitled to temporary displacement benefits, and their relocation to temporary housing accommodations that are safe, sanitary, and decent shall be monitored by DOH. As briefly mentioned a moment ago, the developer is Bickerdike Redevelopment Corporation. Established in 1967, Bickerdike is a member-based, not-for-profit community development corporation based on the northwest side of Chicago and serving low and moderate income Chicagoans with a particular focus on the communities of Westtown, Humboldt Park, Logan Square, Avondale, and Hermosa. Bickerdike's mission is to provide high-quality, affordable housing, confront gentrification and displacement, promote economic development by creating and preserving jobs, and advocating for equitable allocation of resources. Bickerdike Apartments, the property management arm of Bickerdike Redevelopment Corporation, shall continue its management of this property and oversees a portfolio that includes approximately 1,200 affordable units. Past recent projects completed by Bickerdike with DOH assistance include the Nelson Mandela Apartments in 2018 and the Lucy Gonzalez Parsons Apartments, a deeply affordable transit-oriented development at the Logan Square Blue Line Station completed in 2022. Total development costs are approximately $43,570,000. The rehab is to be undertaken as one financing plan utilizing city-sourced 9% low-income housing tax credits, as well as soft funds from the city of up to $12,725,000. In addition to the city assistance, the development will also be financed with private first mortgage debt, equity generated by the use of historic tax credits, and seller financing in relation to the transfer of the project. Oh, excuse me. So I'll just recap the financing particulars. Total development costs are $43,570,000. The rehab is to be undertaken as one financing plan using city-sourced 9% low-income housing tax credits, as well as soft funds of up to $12,725,000. In addition to the city assistance, the development will also be financed with private first mortgage debt, equity generated by the use of historic credits, and seller financing in relation to the transfer of the project. In conclusion, DOH supports the preservation of family-oriented, affordable rental housing in the Logan Square and Westtown communities contemplated by the Boulevard Apartments Preservation Proposal. And to this end, DOH respectfully requests the committee's favorable consideration of the action described on this slide, namely issuance of up to $12,725,000 in multifamily program funds. Alder Laspada of the 1st Ward and Alder Fuentes of the 26th Ward are both supportive of the project. With your approval and City Council passage, closing on the financing may occur as early as September 2023. I'd like to thank you for your favorable consideration of this request, and I, as well as staff from Bickerdike Redevelopment Corporation, are available to answer any questions.
Thanks. Yes, Vice Chair Conway.
So I assume this is not in a, Joseph, this isn't a, it's not in a TIF district, is that correct?
That's correct, sir. None of the 3 properties that comprise this project is located in the geography of a tax increment financing district.
And does this, if you could go back to the sources and uses, the next one. Is the DOH funding as it's listed on there, is that where it fits in the capital stack just behind the first mortgage there?
Yes, that's correct. The senior loan would be the privately sourced first mortgage debt. DOH funding would be junior to that and second lien.
Wonderful. Okay, those are all my questions regarding Exhibit A here. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Laspada.
I will, thank you very much, Chair. I'll only say, like, not only do I really appreciate the energy efficiency of the project, as Alderman Conway points out, that the challenge of creating affordable housing without TIF is very challenging. So to see a project like this happening is great. I'll just say the fact that we're not only building 3-bedroom units, but preserving 4-bedroom units that are deeply needed, that are deeply challenging to do as new construction, that's fantastic. I really love what we're accomplishing with this project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I'm just going to take the chair prerogative. And Joy, if you would just speak to this project. Bickerdike has been around for over 50 years. You've got to be the oldest affordable housing developer in the city, if not second oldest.
We are the oldest in the city and one of the oldest in the country, as a matter of fact. And so we've been doing this for quite a few years, and Boulevard Apartments is one of the first low-income housing tax credit projects that we did without Section 8. So it's a 35-year-old development, and the residents that live there are happy, but these buildings are in need of upgrades. And, you know, affordable housing runs with a very limited budget. So there, you know, you run into a moment where there isn't enough money in the reserves to fund the capital work that really needs to be done. And that's the moment that we're at. A lot of projects don't get to 35 years before they're at that moment, but I'm happy to say that we were able to operate for that long. Residents really do. I mean, we would never build a new unit of housing without air conditioning today. It would be considered economic obsolescence, especially with global warming. And so, you know, those retrofits, it'll be all electric. There won't be any gas in the development, you know, as part of the decarbonization efforts. And so we're really trying to utilize the opportunity to create better housing and preserve it for at least another 35 plus years.
Thank you very much, Joy, for your time this morning and your service to the city of Chicago. And before I ask for a motion, I just want to let you know that Alderman Fuentes is also in support of this. She has given us a letter of support for this item. Can I get a motion for item number 9 on our agenda today? So moved by Alderman LaSpada, recommending do pass. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. We'll report this out at our next city council meeting. Moving right along to item number 10. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Moving on to item number 10, which is a proposed ordinance authorizing the payment of various small claims against the city of Chicago. This was a direct introduction, and the list of payments approved was sent to everyone electronically. And if there are no objections, they'll be placed in the omnibus. Item number 11, a proposed ordinance denying the payment of various small claims against the city of Chicago. Also a direct introduction, and this list of payments denied was electronically sent to everyone. If there are no objections, these will be placed in the omnibus. Item number 12, 2 proposed ordinances authorizing charitable solicitation of the public way are tag day permits. We have one from the Salvation Army, North and Central Illinois Division citywide from November 1st, 2023 through December 24th, 2023, excluding Sundays. And the second from the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, again citywide, August 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. If there are no objections, these will be placed in the omnibus. Item number 13, a communication transmitting reports of cases in which verdicts, judgments, or settlements were entered into for the month June 2023. This report was also provided to everyone electronically, and if there are no objections, this report will be placed on file with the city clerk office. Item number 14 is from the Department of Law. We have 4 proposed orders authorizing the Corporation Council to enter into and execute settlement orders in the following cases. The first one is A, Vincent Tucker versus City of Chicago, Carlos Yanez Jr. and Julian Rodriguez, case number 2019 L4002. We're joined today by Assistant Corporation Counsel James Orman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This case involves a police motor vehicle pursuit in which the fleeing offender vehicle struck a civilian car, resulting in significant bodily injuries to the entirely innocent civilian driver, 61-year-old Vincent Tucker. The accident occurred on Sunday, August 19th, 2018, at 2:21 p.m. at 76th Street in Harvard, when the offender vehicle, a black Audi A4, traveled the wrong way southbound on Harvard Street and entered into the intersection, striking Mr. Tucker's vehicle, which was traveling eastbound with the right-of-way on 76th Street. At the time of the collision, Chicago police officers Carlos Yanes Jr. and Julian Rodriguez were in pursuit of the Audi based upon suspicion that it was stolen and being used for narcotics trafficking. Mr. Tucker sustained multiple traumatic injuries and spent 12 days at University of Chicago Hospital and another 20 at Shirley Ryan Ability Labs Rehabilitation Hospital with medical bills of $331,000 for past injuries. He is also seeking $93,000 for a future hip replacement surgery, and the Department of Law recommends settlement for $750,000. The plaintiff alleges in this case that the city of Chicago, through its officers, Carlos Yanes Jr. and Julian Rodriguez, were willful and wanton in pursuing the Audi in an unsafe manner and in violation of CPD general orders, causing it to continue to flee and crash into the vehicle driven by Vincent Tucker. The police officers who were assigned to an unmarked Ford Explorer encountered the Audi and pulled it over at approximately 160 West 73rd Street based upon it having an invalid South Carolina license plate. Neither the driver nor passenger could produce a driver's license, proof of insurance, or registration. The officers noted an odor of cannabis and that the driver, Antoine Lockett, was handling a bundle of currency. The interaction was recorded by the officers on their body-worn cameras. After Lockett failed to produce identification, Officer Yanes asked Lockett to exit his vehicle, at which time Lockett started to open his door, but then he immediately fled and sped away in the Audi. Officers Yanes and Rodriguez then returned to their vehicle and initiated pursuit. The pursuit lasted approximately 53 seconds, traveling through mostly residential streets with little vehicular traffic and little or no pedestrian traffic. The officers called in to dispatch to notify that they were pursuing and gave the streets and locations they were on, but did not give the reason for the pursuit as required by the general order. A supervisor went on air immediately prior to the crash and asked why the officers were pursuing. In addition, while the officers used their emergency lights and briefly toggled their siren during the pursuit, they did not turn on their emergency sirens continuously as required to do so by the general order governing pursuits until after they had observed the collision. During the pursuit, the Audi disregarded stop signs and continued to accelerate away, turning the wrong way down one-way streets at 74th Street, and then turning to travel southbound on Harvard, which is a one-way northbound street, where the officers observed Lockett's vehicle crash into Mr. Tucker's. According to an accident reconstructionist retained by the city, the highest rate of speed for the officer's vehicle was approximately 52 miles per hour during the pursuit, and they averaged approximately 33 miles per hour during the course of the pursuit, which involved 5 turns and the longest distance between any turn being a single block. After the collision, officers Yanes and Rodriguez approached the crash site, and Rodriguez got out of the vehicle and attempted to chase after Lockett. Lockett initially evaded Rodriguez, but was apprehended nearby by another police officer after fleeing from the site on foot. Lockett later admitted that he had swallowed ecstasy pills and that he had on him when he fled from the officers. He pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of a motor vehicle accident involving personal injuries, aggravated fleeing or attempting to elude a peace officer, and aggravated driving under the influence of drugs, and was sentenced to 2 years. In their pursuit report after the fact, the officers indicated that they pursued the Audi based upon suspected narcotics trafficking, citing the strong odor of cannabis and the drivers holding a bundle of currency. However, Officer Rodriguez can be heard on his body-worn camera after the incident telling a supervisor that the pursuit was for a traffic offense. No cannabis was found in the Audi or on the offenders, though a DUI kit for Lockett turned up cannabis metabolite. The plaintiff's police procedures expert will testify that the officers had no basis other than the non-hazardous traffic offenses for which to initiate pursuit of the Audi, and that the pursuit was therefore prohibited under the police department's general orders. He also criticizes the officers for failing to use emergency sirens and continuing to pursue when the offender's vehicle traveled the wrong direction down one-way streets, creating a danger to the public that outweighed the need to immediately apprehend the offenders. Mr. Tucker sustained a flail injury to his chest, which consists of multiple ribs fractured in more than one location between the 6th through 8th ribs. He also sustained a hemothorax, or blood in the cavity surrounding a lung. The respiratory issues caused by these injuries complicated his hospital course of treatment as he developed hemorrhagic shock that required him to be sedated or intubated for much of his 12 days at the University of Chicago Medical Center. He also sustained a left acetabular or hip socket fracture and pelvic fractures, as well as a compression fracture at the T7, T8 vertebrae. These fractures did not require surgery and fully healed. He did, however, have an extended rehabilitation program at Shirley Ryan and required a home nursing during the month following his release. The plaintiff retained an expert witness who examined him and has opined that Mr. Tucker has traumatic arthritis caused by this accident and that he will require a future hip replacement surgery. Mr. Tucker also claims that he suffered PTSD related to the incident, with nightmares concerning driving and collisions and the inability to go back behind the wheel of a car following the accident. He also had head trauma, including claims of minor cognitive deficits. The plaintiff's past and future medical bills related to this incident total approximately $425,000. If the matter were to proceed to trial, a jury could award damages for past and future pain and suffering, emotional distress and disability, in addition to the claimed medical damages. The law department therefore recommends settlement for $750,000.
Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Was the Audi stolen?
There was no report of it having been stolen. It was completely unregistered.
Was it his? Was it Mr. Lockett's?
It wasn't registered to Mr. Lockett or to anyone.
So they're responding to a report of a stolen vehicle. Could very well have been legitimate. 53 seconds, Mr. Lockett decided to go down the wrong way at high speeds to evade capture after being stopped because of the drugs and cash in his car. And yet we're on the hook once again because we happen to have the biggest checkbook because of criminals. Correct? You don't have to answer that, I already know.
I think that
over here.
I'm sorry, the reason for the potential liability in this case is that the law recognizes that officers who are in pursuit of a vehicle have a duty to do so in a manner that's not willful and wanton. And obviously the offender carries responsibility for his conduct as well. But
how much is his responsibility costing him?
He's not
Nothing.
taking part in the settlement.
Right.
So
Okay.
yes, the city is the one responsible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Alderman Laspada.
Thank you, Chair. Just no further understanding the merits of the case, it seems like it revolves around the conditions of the chase happening outside of what the general orders for officers would be in a case like this.
There are, two violations in terms of not providing the information based upon which, the officers were pursuing initially, and then the lack of using sirens continuously that were alleged. And, those obviously are things that sometimes happen as a pursuit develops, but they did not happen in this case. So that is part of the basis for the liability analysis.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Laspada. Is there a motion to recommend approval of item number 14A? Call for a roll call by who? Alderman Lopez? Of course. Vice Chair Conway. Alderman LaSpada, Alderman Hopkins, Alderman Hall. Yes or no? Okay. Alderman Mitchell, Alderman Harris, Alderman Beal, Alderman Lee, Alderman Ramirez, Alderman Quinn, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Moore, Alderman Curtis, Alderman O'Shea, Alderman Taylor, Alderman Mosley, Alderman Rodriguez, Alderman Scott, Alderman Cicho Lopez, Alderman Burnett, Alderman Irvin, Alderman Taliaferro, Alderman Cardona, Alderman Wagisback, Alderman Rodriguez Sanchez, Alderman Ramirez Rosa, Alderman Villegas, Alderman Mitz, Alderman Spizzato, Alderman Vasquez, Alderman Riley, Alderman Knudsen, Alderman Martin, Alderman Silverstein, Chairman Dowell votes aye. 17-3, the item passes. Alderman Irvin votes aye. 18-3, the item passes. We'll now move on to 14B. Thank you, Mr. Orman.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to 14B. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to give our court reporter 5 minutes of a recess. I know those little fingers are hurting. Appreciate you. 5 minutes. No. We will now go back, how about that forward, to our agenda. 14B, which is Bernard Kirsch versus the City of Chicago, Officer Gerald Williams, case number 2020 L1518 for $750,000. We're joined by Deputy Corporation Counsel Victoria Benson. Ms. Benson?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. I am here today to request your approval to settle a federal lawsuit filed by plaintiff Bernard Kirsch for $750,000. This is a state court lawsuit arising from Officer Gerald Williams's use of an emergency takedown of plaintiff Bernard Kirsch on November 28, 2019. Plaintiff alleges willful and wanton conduct against both Officer Williams and the City of Chicago. Officer Williams was not equipped with a body-worn camera on that date. However, the events were captured on a cell phone video by a passerby, as well as security cameras of nearby businesses. The passerby's video was widely disseminated on social media, local news outlets, as well as national news outlets. On November 28, 2019, Thanksgiving Day, at approximately 4 p.m., Officer Williams and his partner were traveling westbound in an unmarked squad car near the intersection of East 79th Street and South Cottage Grove Avenue as part of routine patrol. The officers initiated an investigative stop when they saw the plaintiff drinking from a bottle of vodka and entering a CTA bus stall. Officer Williams approached plaintiff, who appeared intoxicated, and began to swear. Officer Williams advised plaintiff he was receiving a ticket for an ordinance violation for drinking on the public way. Officer Williams was with plaintiff at the side of the squad car, while his partner remained inside the squad car to run the plaintiff's name for a background and warrant check prior to issuing a non-custodial ticket. Plaintiff swore at Officer Williams and generally became non-cooperative. Plaintiff also licked or attempted to lick Officer Williams. Officer Williams did not request any assistance from his partner. Instead, Officer Williams held onto plaintiff's wrist to prevent him from turning around. Officer Williams' partner happened to step out of the car to check the liquor bottle for details for the ticket, and at approximately the same time, Officer Williams told the plaintiff that he was under arrest for the lick or attempted lick. Believing that Officer Williams had the situation under control, his partner returned to the squad car. Plaintiff then became agitated, began to stiffen his body, and pull away while threatening Officer Williams. Officer Williams did not change his hold of plaintiff or request any assistance from his partner. Quickly thereafter, the plaintiff spit phlegm and saliva into Officer Williams' eyes. Officer Williams testified that his vision was compromised by the spit and that he believed that the plaintiff was going to further attack him. Officer Williams then executed an emergency takedown of the plaintiff. The takedown involved Officer Williams wrapping his arms around wrapping his arms around the plaintiff, lifting him up off of the ground, and then forcefully taking the plaintiff onto the ground, onto the street and curb area. After the takedown, plaintiff was treated in an emergency room where he was diagnosed with concussion symptoms and acute alcohol intoxication. He was released to police custody following treatment. Thereafter, the plaintiff was charged and arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including a felony count of aggravated battery, and was issued a citation for drinking alcohol in public. About a week after plaintiff's arrest, Reverend Jesse Jackson posted plaintiff's bail, and plaintiff was released from Cook County Jail. Now, plaintiff denies licking and spitting on Officer Williams. However, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor battery charge for doing so. According to plaintiff, he only pled guilty as a compromise to get out of jail. Plaintiff claims to have suffered an exacerbation to an already serious eye injury, cognitive and memory issues because of a concussion, and a shoulder injury causing him to continue to suffer from ongoing shoulder pain. COPA, with a concurrence by the superintendent, then Superintendent Brown, found Officer Williams' use of force, his emergency takedown in this matter, to be non-compliant with Chicago Police Department policy. Given the risks associated with proceeding to trial in this matter, we recommend settling this case for $750,000.
Alderman Spizzato.
I am, but I guess you just know I'm always ready. Sorry for being efficient and showing up to these meetings and asking good questions, Victoria. I'm glad you said emergency takedown. So the odd thing to me was we're labeling this an emergency takedown, but yet he got time for using an emergency takedown. I thought the video was pretty clear that he spit in his face. You said he's denying it. Wasn't that pretty clear in that amateur cell phone video that he spit in his face or did he lick? I haven't looked at it for a couple of years. I know it was all over the internet and all over the news.
I mean, our defense would be in defense of Officer Williams' conduct, which is that he spit in his eye. But
Okay.
yes, the plaintiff denies doing so.
Okay, all right, that's all. That was pretty clear to me. He spit in his face, and even though he's denying it, I mean, you can't deny a video. Thank you. Thanks, Victoria. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Alderman Spizzato. Alderman Mitchell?
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned that then Superintendent Brown stated that after further review him in COPA, that they agreed that it was an excessive use or no, against policy?
That it was outside of department policy, yes.
What did anybody ever say what would have been an appropriate reaction to that?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
Did anybody state what would have been an appropriate action to that?
Oh, in terms of a recommendation, in terms of what he should have done or as an alternative? No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Mitchell. Alderman Vasquez?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I had a quick question because I know in part of the briefings, what was mentioned is that the officer did not have a body camera or he turned it off. Could you expound a little more on that?
Sure, he was not equipped with a body-worn camera.
Got it. So was this prior to body cam or?
No, it's just that his unit, he was not equipped with a body-worn camera.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to get clarity on that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, is there a motion to recommend approval of item number 14B? Alderman Rodriguez so moves. The do pass motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Okay. Alderman Spizzato, anyone else? And Alderman Mitchell. And Curtis. And Quinn. Cardona. All right, we will report the do pass recommendation with the noes identified at the next city council meeting. Moving on to 14C, Garrett et al. Versus City of Chicago et al. Case number. Yes, Alderman Rodriguez.
The 1:30 will commence several minutes after the conclusion of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. My bad. I should have said that after break, but you got it. Case number 2016 CV 7319 in the amount of $2 million. We're on 14C. We're joined by Victoria Benson again from the Corp Council.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon again, committee members. I'm here today to request your approval to settle a federal lawsuit filed by plaintiffs arising from the fatal shooting of Darius Cole-Garrit for $2 million. On August 14th, 2014, two Chicago police officers, Officers Matthew O'Brien and Officer James Bansley, discharged their firearms at Cole-Garrit, ultimately killing him. Plaintiffs allege a federal claim of excessive force against the officers, a state law claim of loss of society against the city and the officers, and a Monell policy claim against the city of Chicago, alleging that the city fails to properly train, supervise, and discipline its officers, such that it was the moving force behind the alleged constitutional violation. Body-worn camera does not exist for any of the events at issue. The events leading to this shooting are contested by the parties. On August 14th, 2014, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Officers Bansley and O'Brien, along with two other officers, were on patrol in an unmarked Chicago police SUV on the far southeast side of Chicago near the intersection of East 133rd Street and South Forestville Avenue. Near that location, the officers encountered then 21-year-old Cole-Garrit, who was riding his bike. According to the officers, they had received a tip about a week earlier that gang members in the area were transporting guns by bike, so they wanted to investigate whether Cole-Garrit was such a courier when they saw him. The officers drove east on East 133rd Street and approached Cole-Garrit in their vehicle from behind him. When they were about 15 to 20 feet away from him, the officers shone their vehicle spotlight onto Cole-Garrit. According to the officers, at this point, Cole-Garrit got off of his bike, turned toward the police vehicle, and pulled a firearm from his waistband. The officers testified that Cole-Garrit then took a tactical stance, squaring his feet toward the officers and pointing at the gun at the officers with his arms extended out in front of him. According to the officers, Cole-Garrit then turned, abandoned the bike, and fled without firing. Once Cole-Garrit began to flee, Officers Bansley and O'Brien exited the police vehicle, which was still moving, to pursue Cole-Garrit on foot. Officer O'Brien was driving and failed to place the vehicle in park before exiting. This led another officer inside the vehicle to jump into the driver's seat to place the vehicle in park, while the other officers pursued Cole-Garrit on foot. As a result, this officer did not see anything that occurred thereafter because he was busy trying to stop the police vehicle from rolling away. All he heard was gunshots. As the officers chased Cole-Garrit, they yelled for him to drop the gun. According to Officer O'Brien, During the chase, when the officers were approximately 10 feet away from Cole-Garrit, he saw Cole-Garrit turn and point the gun directly at Officer Bansley. Officer O'Brien will testify that he yelled to Officer Bansley to warn Officer Bansley that he was going to shoot before firing his gun 11 times at Cole-Garrit. Officer Bansley fired his gun 5 times, beginning after Officer O'Brien's first or second shots. Officer Bansley testified that he did not see Cole-Garrit point a gun at him the second time. A third officer who participated in the foot pursuit, who was running behind Officer O'Brien, testified that he believed Cole-Garrit actually pointed the gun at him and Officer O'Brien. A firearm was recovered from the scene approximately 20 feet from Cole-Garrit's final resting place. Plaintiffs claim that the shooting of Cole-Garrit was premeditated murder sparked by an encounter earlier that day. According to plaintiffs, the officers drove a police vehicle onto a basketball court where Cole-Garrit was playing and threatened him and made good on their threat when they saw him on Forestville Avenue later that day. Non-party witnesses will testify that there was a confrontation between the officers and plaintiff. The officers, however, deny encountering Cole-Garrit earlier that day. Given the risks associated with proceeding to trial in this matter, we recommend settling this matter for $2 million.
I see no hands up for questions. So can I get Alderman Spizzato?
Give some other people a chance, but what can I say, you know? So,
Well, raise your hand. We know you have a question.
I know, okay. I was trying to give other people a chance, but what can I say? I'm sorry, Victoria, I'm asking you questions I know the answer to because I was actually at the briefing. So a couple quick questions. Didn't you, I don't think you mentioned it this time, but didn't you mention it before in the report that these officers didn't get any time or didn't get suspended or anything like that, or COPA didn't find them guilty of anything?
This was investigated by IPRA and the shooting was found to have been justified.
Right. Okay. Okay. And I believe in the briefing you said they saw him point a gun to one of the things was you saw him point a gun at him the first time, took a tactical stance, but they didn't see him point the gun at him the second time when they shot him after the second time.
One of the officers said he didn't see it the second time. One officer said Officer O'Brien says he saw Cole-Garrit point a gun at Officer Bansley the second time. Officer Bansley says he did not see that. A third officer who was there behind Officer O'Brien says that he believes that he saw Cole-Garrit point the gun at him and Officer O'Brien rather than Officer Bansley.
Okay. I don't know where he was in proximity to into the shooting or whatever. So, I mean, if he wasn't looking, then obviously you wouldn't see him, but two of them saw it. Can you break it down for me to one time and a 2 time? How many guys saw it 2 times? How many guys saw it 1 time?
Sure. All officers in the car saw Cole-Garrit point a gun at them the first time when they were still inside the police vehicle. Officer O'Brien is the only officer who says that he sees Cole-Garrit point a gun at Officer Bansley the second time. A third officer says that he saw Cole-Garrit point the gun at him and Officer O'Brien rather than Officer Bansley.
Which was the second time when he got shot.
Correct.
All right.
Officer O'Brien and Officer Bansley are the individuals who actually fire their weapons. Officer Bansley said that he did not see Cole-Garrit point the gun the second time.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Victoria, just a question I have. Were any bullets or casings, whatever, from Cole-Garrett's supposed gun found on?
Not that I'm aware of. There's no belief or allegation or suspicion that Cole-Garrit actually fired the weapon. In fact, quite the opposite.
Okay. Yeah. All right, can I get a motion to recommend approval of item number 14C? Moved by Alderman Rodriguez. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, we're going to take a roll call vote on this because I can't tell her. Tell me who's the no. All right, Alderman, Vice Chair Conway. Alderman LaSpada. Alderman Hopkins, Alderman Hall. Alderman Mitchell. Alderman Harris, Alderman Beal, Alderman Lee. Alderman Ramirez, Alderman Quinn, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Moore. What did you say? Aye, okay. Alderman Curtis, Alderman O'Shea, Alderman Taylor, Alderman Mosley, Alderman Rodriguez, Alderman Scott, Alderman Cicho Lopez, Alderman Burnett, Alderman Irvin, Alderman Taliaferro, Alderman Cardona, Alderman Wagasback, Alderman Rodriguez Sanchez, Alderman Ramirez Rosa, Alderman Villegas, Alderman Mitz, Alderman Spizzato, Alderman Vasquez, Alderman Riley, Alderman Knudsen, Alderman Martin, Alderman Silverstein, Chairman Dowell votes aye. Alderman Vasquez votes aye. Alderman Cardona votes aye. No. Okay. Hold on a second. I have to find Cardona. Okay. So, 10 ayes, 10 noes, the item passes, and we'll report the due pass. I said that. 10 ayes and 9 noes. The item passes, and we'll report this out at the next city council meeting. Thank you very much. Item 14D, Darnell Smith et al. Versus City of Chicago et al. Case number 2015 CV 3647 for $4,987,500. We have Jennifer Bagby from the Department of Law.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Bagby. I'm the Deputy Corporation Counsel of the Public Safety Reform Division. I'm here today requesting that you approve settlement authority in the matter of Darnell Smith et al. Versus City of Chicago et al. This is a class action lawsuit that was filed in federal court in 2015, alleging class claims that the city maintained a policy or custom of unconstitutional stops of individuals by Chicago police officers without reasonable articulable suspicion, therefore in violation of the Fourth Amendment and the principles of Terry versus Ohio. The underlying claims were brought under Section 1983 of the Civil Rights Act. Some of the unconstitutional stops raised in the Smith lawsuit include investigatory stops conducted specifically in enforcement of the city's gang and narcotics-related loitering ordinances. The Department of Law recommends settling Smith through the following: by adding pedestrian investigatory stops to the existing policing consent decree to address revision to CPD policies and procedures regarding investigatory stops, as well as the monitoring, reporting, review, community engagement, training, and accountability measures related to investigatory stop procedures, including specific revisions to enforcement of the loitering ordinance to ensure that all stops are properly documented and conducted consistent with the Constitution. Additionally, a negotiated monetary damages and attorney's fees and costs in the amount of $4,987,500. The Smith plaintiffs originally sought declaratory relief that the city's policies, practices, and procedures involving investigatory stops and protective pat-downs, as well as enforcement of the loitering ordinances, were unconstitutional and discriminatorily applied. The damages also sought compensatory damages on behalf of each of the individual plaintiffs for their specific stop, as well as class-wide compensatory damages for all stops in the designated period of time, which would be all individuals stopped since 2013, which would be over 2.5 million documented stops. The plaintiffs also sought injunctive relief in the form of their own consent decree, whereby a court-appointed monitor would oversee CPD's loitering enforcement practices and investigatory stop and protective pat-down policies, training, supervision, and discipline. The plaintiffs in Smith also sought punitive damages on behalf of each plaintiff, as well as attorney's fees and costs under Section 1988 of the Civil Rights Act that would likely have amounted to $10 million if the matter proceeded to trial. Through litigation, the city was able to significantly narrow the claims and issues, including reducing the original named plaintiffs from 35 to the current existing 5 named plaintiffs, none of whom have any reportable criminal history. Additionally, through litigation, the city was able to prevent certification of a monetary damages class that could have covered all of those individuals stopped since 2013 for their own monetary award. And this allowed the city to engage in settlement discussions and reach the proposed settlement by lowering the previous demands. It was only through this earlier litigation that we were able to reach this proposed agreed settlement. Although the city was successful in limiting the class, the court did certify 2 classes for declaratory and injunctive relief that would be the subject of any litigation at trial. The first class is a Fourth Amendment class consisting of all persons who have been since April 20th, 2013, or who will be subjected to an investigatory stop, and the second class being a Fourth Amendment subclass specifically involving stops related to the enforcement of the gang and narcotics loitering ordinances. By certifying these classes, a federal judge has determined some evidence of unconstitutional investigatory stop practices, including in the enforcement of the gang and narcotics loitering ordinances. The benefits of this settlement are that the city would otherwise have to litigate 5 separate trials if this matter were to proceed to trial, and would risk a declaratory finding that the city's policies, practices, and procedures involving investigatory stops and protective pat-downs, as well as the specific enforcement of these ordinances, are unconstitutional and discriminatory. The attorney's fees and costs, should the city not prevail at trial, could reach $10 million if we were to litigate all of these matters. As well, by this settlement, there will be consistent oversight and monitoring of investigatory stop policy, training, and review that will ensure that CPD's investigatory stops are constitutionally conducted, well documented, through the consent decree, which has an established mechanism for the development and review of policy and training, and a process to help the city and CPD ensure consistent data collection and analysis. This settlement does not prevent the enforcement of the gang and narcotics loitering ordinances. The only change in the enforcement is in the documentation of the initial contact through a dispersal order as required by the ordinance, and not through a contact card or an investigatory stop report. Additionally, this settlement ensures that enforcement is consistent with the ordinance as written and the Constitution, and that officers have the necessary tools to conduct enforcement in a manner consistent with the Constitution. And for these reasons, the Department of Law is recommending this settlement. Thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
I'll give Nick a break. You're welcome. So good afternoon, again, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, colleagues. So a couple questions, if I may. The original settlement for the original settlement request for the $2.5 million arrests in question was what?
Unfortunately, given that we're in a public hearing, settlement discussions and negotiations are confidential under the federal rules of evidence and the federal rules of civil procedure. So the original, I can just say that the original demand on the original case as filed before it was narrowed down was significant higher than the negotiated amount that we were able to agree to, subject to your approval, based upon that litigation that took place.
So we are 99% different from where we were when they first filed with this, 99.7% roughly, so I don't get in trouble for saying anything. Why was there no effort to push even further? Considering that we've seen the ask change dramatically, not once, but twice now, or we've seen it change dramatically also with the reduction in the number of class action participants.
So I can speak to the fact that there were numerous motions to dismiss that were litigated. And in the course of establishing and certifying the class, the judge was able to weigh the evidence before her of what claims would stand, and that's the claims that were left. Additionally, there were significant settlement measures taken. There was mediation and settlement discussions through both the court, as well as the use of a retired federal judge who acted as a mediator.
So all of this stems from 2.5 million arrests from that time span, of which racial profiling is being used as the basis for this lawsuit?
These are not arrests. These were investigatory stops. So
2.5 million investigatory stops, and we're being accused of racially profiling 2.5 million people, or 2.5, making 2.5 million racially profile investigatory stops.
that is part of the allegation in the lawsuit.
Now, when the law department reviewed that, did we? Were there any of those 2.5 million stops? Did they actually produce people who were in possession of illegal drugs, in possession of illegal guns, possession of anything that would warrant and justify a stop and or result in an arrest?
You have to remember, first of all, obviously, in the open meeting such as this, protecting what's privileged and what would be considered work product and deliberative in terms of how a lawsuit such as this is defended. But the focus of this lawsuit is on what the city can prove in terms of, or would be able to prove if this matter were to go to trial in terms of those stops that occurred some as far back as 2013 without, say, body cam video, without, say, the documentation that may exist today. So again, it's a focus on how we would defend the claims.
So let me ask then, one of the things that we are constantly hit with is that ever delightful Monell case. Would that have been applied to this lawsuit as well?
There are Monell claims in addition to the class. There are Monell claims that would still be standing, that could still be litigated if this matter were to go to trial.
Okay. I know that it was requested what the specific changes, what the specific action changes because of this class action would result to in terms of the general orders. Was that provided to us?
No.
Will that be provided to us?
We've made the request through the chair, and when you attended the briefing, Alderman Lopez, we have not received a response yet, so I can't say yes or no. We did make the request. We're waiting to hear back.
So, Chairman, may I ask, when we have a situation like this, for example, and I appreciate you making the request of the department, why are we not given the answer? When we have to decide on whether or not our department is in the right or in the wrong, and we specifically say that you are party to a lawsuit that can quite literally change the way we engage individuals who oftentimes are in fact gang loitering, when you are now telling us that our police officers cannot visit someone for 12 hours, how are we supposed to make an informed decision then when the department refuses to cooperate? And which department is refusing to cooperate? Because I don't want to assume it's the police. It might be the law department not cooperating with us.
Nobody's refusing to cooperate. Certainly, you're well aware of what the loitering ordinance requires in terms of a dispersal order. That is what the change in CPD policy is proposed to be, is the requirement of the dispersal order and not any form of an investigatory stop to gather information, individualized information from people, that is what is the source of the problem or the issue raised in the lawsuit. So the proposed changes to CPD's policy are consistent with your ordinance as written and provide officers the tools to enforce the ordinance without unnecessarily running into an opportunity to unnecessarily detain someone.
Or get their information about gang affiliation or other things like that, which are all useful tools to us. Thank you, Chairman.
Vice Chair Conway, followed by Alderman Susato.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Obviously, Ms. Bagby, we worked together for a long time at the State's Attorney's Office, so I first want to say that I appreciate the hard work of you, your department, as well as outside counsel in this matter, in a 99.7% reduction in potential liability here, to quote my colleague. Out of the proposed settlement of, what was it, $4.987 million, What is the approximate breakdown between that will go to attorneys as well as that will go to the plaintiffs in question?
So the both the award to the individual plaintiffs and the proposed attorney's fees were negotiated with the assistance of the retired federal judge who acted as the mediator, and the breakdown is $112,500 amongst the plaintiffs and $4,875,000 to attorney's fees and costs.
So perhaps if you could give us just a very short one paragraph primer on how Section 1983 and 1988 attorney fee awards may go in federal court based on that, because obviously that is shocking.
Certainly. As I stated it earlier in the presentation, if this matter were to go to trial under Section 1988, it's likely that the attorney's fees and costs to the plaintiff's attorneys, if they prevailed on even a portion of their claims, could reach $10 million. So under Section 1983 and Section 1988 of the Civil Rights Act, where a plaintiff prevails on those federal claims, the defendant, and that would be the city, is liable for and is responsible for paying fees and costs.
And I don't want to get too much in the realm of speculation, but if, say, the plaintiffs prevailed on one of the 5 claims outstanding, would it be possible for there to be a judgment of exceeding the $5 million at issue here?
Yes, especially in light of the fact that this case was filed in 2015, the number of motions to dismiss that were litigated, and the cost of then litigating the case at trial.
Thank you. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Conway. Alderman LaSpada. For some reason I have.
No, we have the same views in life.
I have Alderman LaSpada on my
I know our
mind.
politics align with each other, but you know.
Alderman Spizzato.
Will, can you sit down, please? Thank you. All right, I think he answered, I don't want to disappoint the new girl, so I don't know if she's heard about me, so you have to, I think I heard you answer a question from Vice Chair Conway. How many people did you say got the 110,000? Was it 4 or 5? I hear you say 10 or
5.
5. Okay, so 5 people got 110, and the rest is just all, and they went from 1 billion to 25 million to 5 million, correct?
Well, again, the specifics of settlement discussions are
Okay, I'm sorry.
confidential under, yes.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Okay, all right, that's it. I mean, it pains me, but yes, I do support this, surprisingly, Madam Chair, but yes, I do support this.
Thank you, Alderman Spizzato.
All right.
For letting the cat out the bag. All right, can I get a motion to recommend approval of item 14D, moved by Alderman Vasquez, recommending do pass? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Alderman Lopez has requested a roll call. Alderman Conway, Alderman LaSpada, Alderman Hopkins, Alderman Hall, Alderman Mitchell, Alderman Harris, Alderman Beal, Alderman Lee, Alderman Ramirez, Alderman Quinn, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Moore, Alderman Curtis, Alderman O'Shea, Alderman Taylor, Alderman Mosley, Alderman Rodriguez, Alderman Scott, Alderman Cicha Lopez, Alderman Burnett, Alderman Burnett, I heard you. Okay. Alderman Irvin, Alderman Taliaferro. Heard. Alderman Taliaferro, Alderman Cardona, Alderman Wagisback, Alderman Rodriguez Sanchez, Alderman Ramirez Rosa, Alderman Villegas, Alderman Mitz, Alderman Spizzato, Alderman Vasquez, Alderman Riley, Alderman Knudsen, Alderman Martin, Alderman Silverstein, Chairman Dowell votes aye. The roll call vote is 18 yeas and 2 nays. We will report item 14D out at the next city council meeting in the affirmative. Before we adjourn, I wanted to take a moment to introduce Committee on Finance staff. I want to introduce Audrey Wade, who is the attorney for the committee. Renee Barrera, who many of you know from the budget department. Brian Friedman, who you all know from the budget committee. And Lucy Macedo. And my intern, Micaiah, who is going to USC. So there be no further business before the committee. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Excuse me, Alderman? That was, I'm getting to filling out my staff. This is not the full staff. In the opinion, all those in favor of adjournment say aye. In the opinion of the chair, there are no nays. So the Committee on Finance is hereby adjourned.